What if a 10-year-old could outsmart one of the greatest minds of our time? What if that 10-year-old could change the world forever? Imagine a world where a young prodigy, still in elementary school, steps into the spotlight and faces off against none other than Elon Musk, one of the most brilliant minds in the tech world. What would it take for someone so young to outthink him? And more importantly, what could this child teach us about the power of intelligence, innovation, and perseverance? The scene opens with a sudden announcement that sets the stage for a global competition, a competition that will pit the smartest minds on Earth against each other, and where the future of technology itself hangs in the balance. In the bustling heart of Silicon Valley, amidst the towering buildings that house some of the brightest minds in the world, there was an unexpected noise that seemed to ripple through the air. It wasn't the usual hum of innovation. No, this time it was something new, something extraordinary. The kind of thing that made even the most seasoned tech gurus stop and take notice. The headline on every major tech news site read, "The Global AI Showdown, Who Will Shape the Future?" At first glance, it seemed like just another one of those high-stakes competitions that Silicon Valley loved to host, where tech giants like Tesla, SpaceX, and Google flaunted their innovations. But this competition was different. This time, it wasn't just the usual corporate players who would be competing. This time, a 10-year-old prodigy was entering the fray. The prodigy's name was Charlie. Charlie Thompson was not your average 10-year-old. While other kids his age were focused on video games and playing outside, Charlie was already mastering complex algorithms, solving coding problems that stumped adults, and designing machines in his bedroom that rivaled university-level projects. His natural curiosity about the world around him had driven him to dig into artificial intelligence, robotics, and even space exploration, subjects that most adults barely scratched the surface of. But on this particular day, as the announcement echoed across the digital airwaves, Charlie was at home, sitting at his desk. His father, a tech entrepreneur himself, walked into the room, his eyes wide with excitement. "Charlie, you won't believe this," he said, holding up his phone. "You've got an invite to Elon Musk's Global AI Showdown." Charlie looked up, not entirely surprised. He'd been recognized by Elon Musk's team before. He'd even corresponded with some of their engineers about a few ideas he had for Mars exploration. But this? A showdown with Elon Musk himself? The opportunity to prove his abilities on a global stage? That was something entirely different. His father handed him the phone. On the screen was a message from the SpaceX CEO, himself. "Charlie, we've been following your work for a while now. We believe you're the next great mind in tech. This competition is for the brightest minds in the world, and we'd love to see you participate. This could be your moment." Charlie didn't respond right away. His mind raced. This was bigger than anything he had ever done before. There was a lot at stake. He would be going up against experts in AI, robotics, and space technology, people who had spent decades perfecting their craft. And then, of course, there was Elon Musk himself, the man who revolutionized electric cars, colonized space, and changed the way humanity thought about technology. Could a 10-year-old really compete with someone like that? Was it even possible? But deep down, Charlie knew that this was his moment. This was what he had been working toward. He looked at his father and smiled. "I'm in." His father grinned, his pride overflowing. "I knew you'd say that." The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Charlie and his father worked around the clock preparing for the competition. Charlie's mother, who was a psychologist, was constantly reminding him to maintain a healthy balance between work and rest. She made sure that Charlie didn't get too overwhelmed, encouraging him to take breaks and spend time with his friends, including his best friend, Emma. Emma was one of the few people who truly understood Charlie. While most kids his age found him strange or intimidating, Emma always believed in him. They had been inseparable since kindergarten. When Charlie was working late into the night on his AI projects, Emma would send him messages of encouragement, often with a joke or two to lighten the mood. "You got this, Charlie. You'll outsmart Elon before you even break a sweat." But despite her playful tone, Emma understood the gravity of the situation. Charlie was entering a contest unlike any other, and the stakes were high. Not just for him, but for everyone watching. If he won, it would mark a massive turning point in the world of tech, proving that brilliance wasn't limited by age. The competition itself was a multi-phase event. It would take place over the course of several months, with the final showdown happening at a grand venue in downtown San Francisco. The event was being streamed live, with millions of viewers around the world tuning in to watch the incredible battle of minds. As the date of the first round of the competition neared, Charlie's nerves began to build. The preparation was grueling. He spent hours coding, designing AI systems, and analyzing data from past competitions. He even started building his own prototype for a robotic assistant that could think and adapt on its own, a task that would challenge even the most advanced engineers. But for all the hard work, there was still the underlying tension. The pressure to perform at such a young age, to meet the expectations of the world, to somehow be perfect. It was enough to make any adult nervous, let alone a 10-year-old. Yet Charlie had always thrived under pressure. He wasn't just motivated by the challenge itself. He was driven by a deeper desire, a desire to prove that anyone, no matter their age, could make a difference. That intelligence wasn't about how old you were, it was about how hard you worked, how passionately you pursued your dreams. And in just a few days, Charlie would take his first steps into the arena, ready to face the competition of a lifetime. Before we dive into the next phase of Charlie's journey, let's take a moment to think, what if we could all push past our own limitations? What if, like Charlie, we could rise above what others expect of us and reach new heights? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The stage was set. The challenge was clear. And Charlie Thompson was ready. The world had never seen anything quite like Charlie Thompson. At just 10 years old, Charlie wasn't your typical child. While his friends were mastering the latest video games or trading Pokemon cards, Charlie was already working on his own artificial intelligence program and figuring out ways to build machines that could think for themselves. It was as if his mind was a few decades ahead of everyone else's. But Charlie's extraordinary intellect didn't just appear out of nowhere. It wasn't a product of simply being born with a brilliant mind. It was the result of years of work, of a family that nurtured his curiosity, and of a life lived outside the norms. Charlie's parents had always known their son was different. His father, Nathan Thompson, had worked as a tech entrepreneur for most of his life, founding a small but successful startup that helped develop cutting-edge software for robotics. It was through Nathan that Charlie was first exposed to the world of technology. From the moment he could talk, Charlie had been asking questions about the inner workings of everything: computers, machines, gadgets. Nathan would often catch himself smiling when he'd find his young son hunched over a circuit board, trying to figure out how it all worked. But it wasn't just Nathan's influence that shaped Charlie. His mother, Evelyn Thompson, was a psychologist with a deep understanding of human behavior. While Nathan fostered Charlie's love for technology, Evelyn ensured that her son's emotional and mental well-being was just as important. She was the one who taught him how to deal with failure and disappointment, something even the brightest minds in the world had to learn eventually. She always told Charlie, "Your mind is a tool, but your heart is what will guide you." Growing up in this environment, Charlie was given everything he needed to thrive. A combination of intellectual stimulation and emotional support allowed him to grow into someone capable of seeing the world in ways most people couldn't. He had the patience to figure out complex systems, the creativity to come up with unique solutions, and the emotional resilience to handle any setbacks. However, life hadn't always been easy for him. Despite his exceptional abilities, Charlie faced challenges that tested his strength and patience. When he was younger, other kids often teased him. They didn't understand his obsession with machines, his passion for coding, or his ability to solve problems that even their parents couldn't. For many, his intelligence was a point of fascination, but also one of alienation. At school, he was often isolated, struggling to relate to kids his age. While other children were preoccupied with sports and playing outside, Charlie was buried in books about robotics and space exploration. This alienation weighed heavily on him, especially during the early years of elementary school. The feeling of being different, of not fitting in, became something Charlie learned to cope with. But his loneliness also drove him. In those quiet moments when he was alone in his room, surrounded by wires and components, Charlie would retreat into his work. It wasn't just a hobby for him, it was a way to make sense of the world, to feel connected in a way that social interactions couldn't provide. Through his work, he found a sense of purpose and belonging. One of his earliest projects was a small robot he built when he was 7 years old. It was simple, just a small wheeled machine that could navigate around obstacles. But to Charlie, it was a breakthrough. It was his first tangible piece of technology that he could control. His father was the first to see it in action, and the pride in Nathan's eyes when he saw Charlie's creation was something that stayed with Charlie for years. But perhaps the most important relationship Charlie had, aside from his parents, was with his best friend, Emma. Emma was the one person who understood Charlie completely. They'd met in kindergarten, and from the start, there was a connection between them that went beyond mere friendship. Emma wasn't intimidated by Charlie's intelligence or his quirks. Instead, she admired him for who he was. She didn't care that he spent his free time programming or working on his inventions. What mattered to Emma was Charlie's kindness, his generosity, and his ability to make even the most mundane topics interesting. Emma wasn't interested in technology the way Charlie was, but she always supported him. She would sit beside him during late-night coding sessions, handing him tools when he asked and listening to him talk about his latest breakthroughs, even if she didn't fully understand. It was Emma who would remind Charlie to take a break, to relax, to stop and smell the roses, literally. She'd often drag him away from his work and force him to spend time outdoors, even if it was just for a few minutes. "Charlie," she would say with a grin, "you can't solve the world's problems if you're trapped in your room all the time. Let's go for a walk. The world needs your genius, but it also needs you to take care of yourself." For Charlie, Emma was more than just a friend. She was a lifeline. During the most challenging moments in his life, especially when he felt the pressure of being different, Emma was there to remind him that his worth wasn't measured by how many projects he completed or how much others admired him for his intelligence. She saw the person behind the genius. As the months passed, Charlie's reputation grew. His skills were no longer just the stuff of local legends, they were becoming a global phenomenon. Universities and tech companies started to take notice, offering Charlie mentorship opportunities and resources that most people would only dream of. But Charlie was always cautious. He knew that while these offers were tempting, they weren't what he wanted. He wasn't interested in fame or recognition, he wanted to learn, to grow, and to make an impact on the world in a meaningful way. Then came the invitation to Elon Musk's global AI showdown. It was a chance that few people, let alone a 10-year-old, would ever get. But for Charlie, it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about proving to himself that his passion, his curiosity, and his perseverance could take him places others couldn't even imagine. It was about showing the world that age didn't define potential, and that sometimes, the most extraordinary minds were the ones that didn't fit the traditional mold. As the competition approached, Charlie's world narrowed down to one single focus, the challenge. But he knew that no matter the outcome, he had already won. His journey, the path he had taken to get here, and the lessons he had learned along the way, had shaped him into someone who could not only think like a genius but live with purpose, passion, and heart. The countdown to the global AI showdown had begun. Charlie had only a few weeks left to prepare, and every waking hour was consumed by his passion for technology. His room was a chaotic symphony of wires, parts, and screens. He'd spent countless nights building prototypes, testing algorithms, and refining the AI system he hoped would impress Elon Musk and the other tech experts. But despite the excitement that was building around him, there was also an undeniable tension in the air. Charlie could feel it in his bones, the weight of the challenge, the pressure to perform. This wasn't just a local competition. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to prove that even a 10-year-old could take on the giants of the tech world. It wasn't just the competition that had Charlie on edge, it was the anticipation of what lay ahead. Elon Musk was a name that resonated with people all over the globe. His ventures into electric cars, space exploration, and AI had reshaped entire industries. For most people, Elon was a genius, a visionary who seemed to be capable of anything. But Charlie, for all his intelligence and confidence, couldn't help but feel a bit overwhelmed by the thought of going up against him. Despite this, Charlie refused to back down. He wasn't going to let fear hold him back. His love for technology, his drive to make a real difference in the world, was far stronger than any anxiety he felt. As Charlie sat in his room late one night, the glow of his computer screen illuminating his face, a notification pinged on his phone. It was an email from the global AI Showdown organizers. It contained a simple message, but it carried an undeniable weight. Dear Charlie, we're pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a finalist for the Global AI Showdown. The event will take place in San Francisco next month. We look forward to seeing your innovative ideas and projects. Please ensure your participation by confirming your attendance at the venue. Best regards. Global AI Showdown Team. Charlie stared at the screen for a moment, a mixture of disbelief and excitement washing over him. This was it. The moment he'd been working for, the chance to prove himself on the world stage, was right in front of him. His hands shook as he typed a quick response, confirming his attendance. The confirmation wasn't just a victory for Charlie. It was validation. For all the years he'd spent feeling like an outsider, for all the times he'd been made to feel like his ideas were too big for his age, this email was a signal that his work had been seen, that he mattered. His dreams were starting to take shape. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. Charlie spent every moment refining his project, poring over every line of code, tweaking every detail to perfection. His father, Nathan, stayed by his side through it all, offering advice and guidance, while Evelyn, his mother, focused on helping him manage the emotional roller coaster that came with preparing for such an intense competition. Emma was there, too. She never failed to remind Charlie to take breaks, to relax and have fun. She would bring him snacks, force him to go for walks, and even show up with little surprises, like a new game to play, just to distract him for a few minutes. Despite his relentless focus on the competition, Emma's presence kept Charlie grounded. She made sure that, no matter how intense things got, Charlie never lost sight of what really mattered, the joy of learning, the thrill of discovery, and the importance of having fun. As the competition date grew closer, so did the anxiety. Charlie wasn't alone in feeling the pressure. All the other finalists were undoubtedly experiencing the same emotions. The road ahead was unpredictable. In Silicon Valley, the stakes were always high, and it seemed that the entire tech world would be watching. The competitors ranged from young prodigies like Charlie to seasoned professionals, people who had been working in the industry for decades. Some of them were even known to have their own startups or tech ventures. It wasn't hard to imagine how intimidating it could be. But Charlie had a secret weapon, his unwavering belief in his own abilities. Unlike many of the adults who had been entrenched in the world of technology for years, Charlie's youth allowed him to approach problems in fresh, innovative ways. He was not bound by the same constraints, and that gave him an edge. The morning of the competition arrived, and with it, the start of something monumental. Charlie stood in front of his mirror, wearing his favorite hoodie and jeans, looking every bit the young genius he was. His parents were beside him, offering their encouragement. "You've got this, Charlie," Nathan said, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "Remember, it's not about winning. It's about showing the world who you are and what you can do." Evelyn smiled. "You've worked so hard for this. Just take it one step at a time. We're proud of you, no matter what." And then there was Emma, who had arrived early to wish him good luck. She gave him a big hug and whispered, "You've got this, Charlie. Just don't forget to have fun. Charlie nodded, taking a deep breath. This was it. The moment he had been waiting for. He was ready to take on the world. As Charlie and his family made their way to the venue in San Francisco, the excitement in the air was palpable. Everywhere they looked, people were rushing around, preparing for the event of a lifetime. The city was alive with energy, with a palpable sense of anticipation hanging over everything. This wasn't just a competition. This was the future of technology, and everyone knew it. Charlie could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him. He had a lot to prove, not just to the world, but to himself. For years, he had worked in the shadows, creating and building things that only a few people had seen. But now, he would be in the spotlight, surrounded by some of the most brilliant minds in the world. The challenge was about to begin. The moment Charlie stepped into the sprawling venue in San Francisco, he could feel the pulse of the room. It was like entering a futuristic world, where innovation and creativity were the very air they breathed. Massive screens hung from the ceiling, displaying the event schedule, while high-tech gadgets and robots whirred around, showcasing the latest in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Everywhere he looked, there were the brightest minds in tech, some of whom he had only ever read about in books or seen on TV. And now, here he was, standing shoulder to shoulder with them. Charlie's nerves were on edge. He had prepared for this moment for what seemed like an eternity, but now that he was here, it felt surreal. The thought that he, a 10-year-old kid, was competing against tech moguls and prodigies much older than him was almost overwhelming. Yet, deep inside, there was a sense of calm. He had always been a problem solver, and now it was time to put everything he'd learned into practice. As the event organizers guided Charlie and the other competitors to their assigned stations, he couldn't help but glance around at the other participants. Some were in their 20s, others in their 30s, and a few even in their 40s. There was one person in particular who caught his attention, a young woman in her mid-20s named Claire who had already made a name for herself in the AI community. She had built an AI that could predict market trends with incredible accuracy, and she was widely regarded as one of the top competitors at the Showdown. Charlie had read about Claire's work and admired her for her accomplishments, but now, standing in the same room as her, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the competition. Claire gave him a polite smile as she set up her workstation, but there was no mistaking the intensity in her eyes. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to win. Soon enough, the show began. The first round was a series of timed challenges designed to test each participant's problem-solving skills, coding abilities, and creativity. Charlie knew this was his moment. He had spent countless hours preparing, refining his code, and creating an AI system capable of outsmarting even the most advanced algorithms. The challenge was straightforward, at least on the surface. Each participant was given a complex problem to solve involving real-time data analysis and pattern recognition. The goal was to create an AI that could analyze the data, identify key trends, and generate predictions faster than anyone else. The catch? The data was constantly changing, and the AI had to adapt in real time to make the correct predictions. Charlie's fingers flew over the keyboard as he input the necessary parameters into his program. His heart raced, but he stayed calm, relying on the countless hours of practice he had logged in his room. His screen flickered to life as the AI started to process the data, each line of code coming together like pieces of a puzzle. Around him, Charlie could hear the clicking of keyboards, the soft hum of computers processing data. Every now and then, he would glance at the other stations, taking note of the progress of his competitors. Claire's workstation was lit up with a series of flashing lights, and her AI was already making impressive predictions, but Charlie didn't let it distract him. He focused on his own work, determined not to let the pressure get to him. Then came the first major hurdle. One of the data streams began to glitch, sending erratic signals that threw off his AI's calculations. Charlie's heart skipped a beat. He had expected the data to be imperfect, but he hadn't anticipated this level of disruption. His fingers hesitated for a split second, but then he steadied himself. He quickly identified the issue and rewrote the algorithm to account for the glitch. His screen updated, and the AI began to function properly again. For a moment, Charlie allowed himself to breathe, but only for a moment. The clock was ticking, and he still had a lot of work to do. With only a few minutes remaining, Charlie was in the home stretch. His AI had identified the trends in the data and was now generating accurate predictions with impressive speed. He double-checked the outputs, ensuring that everything was aligned with the parameters of the challenge. The final step was to submit his results. As he pressed the Submit button, a wave of relief washed over him. He had done it. His AI had performed flawlessly under pressure. Now, all he had to do was wait. The competition continued on through the day, with each round testing different aspects of AI development. As the rounds progressed, the challenges grew increasingly difficult, but Charlie remained focused. His mind was clear, and he was starting to feel a sense of confidence that he hadn't felt before. Every new challenge was another opportunity to prove himself, to push the boundaries of what was possible. By the time the final round arrived, the tension in the room was palpable. Only a handful of competitors remained, and it was clear that the race was narrowing to just a few frontrunners. Claire, as expected, was one of them. But Charlie was right there with her, neck and neck, his AI system outperforming even some of the more seasoned participants. The final challenge was the most intense yet. This time, the competitors were tasked with building an AI that could solve a real-world problem in the field of space exploration. The problem was complex. The AI needed to analyze data from Mars rovers, determine the most promising areas to explore, and then make real-time decisions about where to send the next rover. It was a problem that required not only advanced data analysis but also an understanding of the intricate challenges involved in space missions. Charlie knew this was his moment to shine. He had always been fascinated by space, ever since he was a little boy, and he had read every book he could find on the topic. This was his chance to combine his love for technology with his passion for space exploration. As he began programming the AI, he felt a surge of excitement. He could almost see the Martian landscape in his mind's eye, the red dust swirling around the rovers as they made their way across the barren planet. Charlie's fingers moved rapidly over the keyboard as he built the AI's neural network to process the data, identify the most promising locations, and make decisions based on the rover's limited resources. The minutes ticked by, and soon enough, the final seconds of the competition were upon them. Charlie looked up at the giant screen in front of him, his heart racing. The results were about to be revealed. Would he be able to outsmart Elon Musk's own engineers? Would he truly be able to prove that age didn't define intelligence? The world was about to find out. The final seconds of the competition ticked away, and Charlie could feel his pulse thundering in his ears. His screen flashed with data, the Martian terrain he had programmed into his AI coming to life as the rover began its exploration. He had done it. His AI system had not only processed the data but had also made real-time decisions about the rover's path, navigating the hostile Martian landscape as if it were second nature. As the clock hit 0, the room erupted into a wave of applause from the crowd. Charlie sat frozen, his hands still resting on the keyboard, waiting for the results to appear on the massive screen in front of him. The tension in the air was electric, thick with anticipation. Then, with a deep breath, the host of the event, a well-known tech journalist, spoke into the microphone. And now, it's time to announce the winners of the Global AI Showdown. The room fell silent. Every competitor, from the youngest prodigies to the seasoned engineers, was waiting with bated breath. In third place, we have Claire, with an impressive AI that solved the space exploration problem with remarkable accuracy. A few cheers rang out as Claire smiled politely, her face betraying no emotion. But Charlie could tell that, despite her composed exterior, she was just as nervous as everyone else. This was a battle to prove who had what it took to make it in the tech world, and now, it was down to just two. The host continued, in second place, we have a competitor whose AI not only solved the problem but did so in record time. A huge round of applause for our runner-up, Charlie. The audience gasped. Charlie's heart stopped for a moment. Second place. He had come this far, worked so hard, and yet, was it really enough? He had been so focused on outsmarting Elon Musk and winning, he hadn't considered the possibility that someone else might beat him. But before he could process his emotions, the host spoke again, this time with an almost theatrical pause. And in first place, the one and only, Elon Musk. A wave of cheers swept through the room, but Charlie felt a chill creep over him. He stared at the screen, watching as Elon Musk's name lit up in bold letters. A mix of disbelief and disappointment washed over him, quickly followed by a sense of pride. He had come so close. He had stood toe-to-toe with the greatest minds in technology, and yet, it wasn't enough to topple Elon Musk. As the applause roared, Charlie stood up slowly, his mind still racing. He hadn't expected this outcome. Elon Musk was, of course, a genius. But in that moment, something unexpected happened. Instead of feeling defeated, Charlie felt a fire spark within him. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The competition ended, and the finalists were ushered off the stage to meet with the judges. Elon Musk, true to his reputation, was already surrounded by reporters, answering questions with his usual calm demeanor. Charlie stood off to the side, taking a few deep breaths to calm his nerves. He had just participated in a once-in-a-lifetime event, and while he hadn't won, the experience was priceless. Still, the sting of second place lingered, and he couldn't help but wonder, what did it mean to be the second best? As Charlie gathered his thoughts, a voice interrupted his contemplation. "Hey, kid." Charlie turned to see a familiar face, Claire. She walked over with a slight smile, her expression both kind and competitive. "Great job out there," Claire said, extending a hand. "You were one of the toughest competitors I've faced. You've got a lot of potential." Charlie shook her hand, his confusion still evident. "Thanks. I didn't expect. I mean, I thought I might have had a chance at first place." Claire chuckled softly. "I think we all did. But trust me, you've got something special. You may not have won today, but you've got a future in this world. Don't let this one result discourage you." Charlie nodded, a bit embarrassed by his own self-doubt. It was hard to admit, but hearing those words from Claire, who was one of the best in the industry, made him feel a little better. It wasn't just about the competition, it was about the journey, the growth, and the skills he had developed along the way. Just as Charlie was about to respond, a voice called out from behind him. "Charlie! Over here!" Charlie turned to find none other than Elon Musk walking toward him. The crowd parted as Musk approached, a rare and genuine smile on his face. "You've got something really incredible," Musk said, his voice calm but filled with genuine admiration. "Your AI system impressed me. I can tell you've got the drive and the talent. Don't get discouraged by second place. You've got a bright future ahead." Charlie was stunned. Elon Musk, the man he had admired for years, was talking to him, complimenting him. He tried to steady his nerves, but all he could do was nod in disbelief. "Thank you, Mr. Musk. That really means a lot coming from you." Musk gave a small smile. "Call me Elon. And remember, it's not about winning the competition. It's about the work you're doing. I can see your passion. Keep at it, and you'll go far." With that, Elon turned and walked away, leaving Charlie in a daze. For a moment, he stood there, processing what had just happened. Second place, the sting of defeat, it all felt a little less important now. His AI had stood up to the very best, and that was something to be proud of. Later that evening, as the event wrapped up, Charlie stood outside the venue, gazing up at the San Francisco skyline. The cool breeze tugged at his hoodie, but he barely felt it. His mind was racing with thoughts of the future. Second place was still a victory in its own right. He had shown the world, and himself, that age didn't matter when it came to brilliance. Charlie had a lot to learn, but the world had seen him. And this was just the beginning. As he prepared to leave, he received a final notification on his phone. It was from the Global AI Showdown organizers. "We were so impressed by your performance at the Global AI Showdown. You are invited to join a new initiative we're launching at Tesla, focusing on the development of next-generation AI systems. We'd love to have you on board. Please let us know if you're interested." Charlie's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Charlie couldn't believe his eyes as he read the message on his phone over and over again. An invitation to join Tesla? It felt like a dream, too good to be true. How could a 10-year-old kid like him possibly be invited to work with a company like Tesla, especially after just participating in a global competition? His fingers hovered over the screen, unsure whether to accept the offer or ask for more time to process it. But one thing was clear, this wasn't an ordinary opportunity. This was a chance to step into a world he had always admired, to join the ranks of those who were shaping the future of technology. The next day, Charlie sat at the kitchen table, his parents across from him, both looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. They had always known their son was different, his insatiable curiosity, his ability to solve complex problems before most kids even learned to read, but this was something else entirely. "Charlie," his mom said gently, her voice tinged with disbelief, "this is unbelievable. Tesla wants you to join them. Do you understand what this means?" Charlie nodded slowly, the weight of the decision settling in. "I think I understand. But I'm not sure if I'm ready. I've never worked at a company before. I'm just a kid." His dad, always the voice of reason, leaned forward. "Charlie, we know you've always been ahead of the curve when it comes to technology. But this is huge. It's an incredible opportunity, but it's also a big responsibility. Are you sure this is what you want?" Charlie's mind was spinning. On one hand, he was terrified. The idea of working alongside the engineers who had developed some of the world's most groundbreaking technologies was daunting. But on the other hand, this was the dream he had been chasing for as long as he could remember. He wanted to create, to innovate, to make a real difference in the world, and this might just be the chance he'd been waiting for. After a long silence, Charlie looked up at his parents with determination in his eyes. "I want to do it. I know I'm young, but I can't pass up the chance to learn from the best. I've always wanted to make a difference. This is my chance." His parents exchanged glances, and for a moment, it seemed like they were weighing the risks, but then his mom smiled and nodded. "If you're sure, then we support you. But remember, you don't have to do this alone. We'll help you figure it out." Charlie's heart swelled with gratitude. His parents had always supported him, even when his dreams seemed far-fetched. They believed in him, and now, he was going to prove that they were right to do so. The next few days were a whirlwind. Charlie signed the necessary paperwork to join Tesla's new AI initiative, and within days, he was flown to Palo Alto, California, where the Tesla headquarters was located. The excitement of it all felt surreal. He had been to California before, but this time was different. This time, he was stepping into the heart of innovation. As Charlie walked through the sleek, modern halls of Tesla's headquarters, he couldn't help but feel like he was in the presence of greatness. Everywhere he looked, engineers and designers were hard at work, their faces focused, their minds consumed with the future of technology. It was the kind of environment Charlie had always dreamed of, a place where ideas weren't just discussed, but brought to life. He was introduced to his new team, a group of engineers and AI specialists who were eager to work with him. Despite the fact that he was only 10 years old, they treated him like a colleague, not a child. They welcomed him into their fold, showing him the ropes and encouraging him to contribute his ideas. One of the engineers, a man named Greg, took Charlie under his wing. Greg had been working at Tesla for years and had helped develop some of the company's most advanced AI systems. He was impressed by Charlie's natural talent and raw potential and couldn't wait to see what the young prodigy could bring to the table. Charlie, Greg said one morning as they sat in the AI lab, surrounded by computers and screens flashing with data, we're working on something big here. We're developing an AI system that can predict and solve real-time traffic issues using data from autonomous vehicles. It's a huge project, but I think you're the perfect person to help us take it to the next level. Charlie's eyes lit up at the challenge. This was exactly the kind of project he had dreamed of working on. Using AI to solve real-world problems, especially in the realm of transportation and autonomous vehicles, was something that had fascinated him for years. He spent the next few weeks diving headfirst into the project. He worked late into the night, refining algorithms, testing predictions, and brainstorming new ideas. His fellow engineers were amazed by his ability to grasp complex concepts so quickly, and Charlie found himself gaining more confidence with each passing day. He was no longer just the kid who had participated in a competition. He was part of a team that was working on something that could change the world. One evening, after a particularly long day in the lab, Greg pulled Charlie aside. "You know, I've worked with some of the best minds in the world," he said, "but there's something about the way you approach problems that's different. You think outside the box, and that's what we need here. Keep pushing the boundaries, Charlie. I have no doubt you're going to make an impact." Charlie felt a surge of pride. Coming from someone like Greg, those words meant everything. It was clear that he was on the right path. But there was still so much more to learn, so much more to prove. As the weeks passed, Charlie's contributions to the project began to make a real difference. His AI models were outperforming expectations, solving traffic issues faster and more efficiently than anyone had imagined. The team was starting to see tangible results, and their work was being incorporated into Tesla's self-driving cars. The media began to take notice. Stories about the young prodigy who had outsmarted Elon Musk in the global AI showdown were everywhere, but Charlie didn't let the attention go to his head. For him, it wasn't about the fame or the recognition. It was about making a difference, about pushing the limits of what AI could do. And as he stood in the Tesla lab one evening, staring at a screen displaying real-time traffic data, he knew that this was just the beginning. There was a long road ahead, filled with challenges and obstacles, but Charlie was ready. He had a vision for the future, and with each passing day, he was one step closer to making that vision a reality. Charlie's life had transformed in the past few weeks. What had started as an impossible dream, to work alongside the very engineers he'd admired for years, had quickly become his new reality. The days blurred together as he dove deeper into his work, learning from the brightest minds in AI, contributing to real-world projects, and refining his own abilities. But despite his excitement, he knew that this wasn't just a playground of innovation. He was about to face his first major test. It all began one crisp morning when Charlie was called into a meeting with Greg and a few of the senior engineers. The room was filled with an air of tension, an undercurrent of urgency that Charlie could feel even before he sat down. The big screen at the front displayed a complex series of traffic simulations that ran in real time, showing data from self-driving Teslas across the country. "Charlie," Greg began, his voice serious, "we've hit a roadblock. One of our AI models, the one designed to predict traffic patterns based on real-time data, has been failing under certain conditions. The predictions are off, and we've had a few close calls with some of the self-driving cars." Charlie's pulse quickened. It was one thing to work on projects in theory, but now he was being asked to help fix a real-world problem that could affect people's lives. His mind immediately started to race through potential solutions. "We're going to need you to figure this out, Charlie," Greg continued. "We've tried tweaking the algorithms, but we're not getting the results we need. We need fresh eyes, and I think you're the one who can help us get past this." Charlie took a deep breath. This was his first major test in the real world, and the pressure was on. But he wasn't going to let that intimidate him. He'd always thrived under pressure, and this challenge, as daunting as it was an opportunity to prove that he truly belonged here, alongside some of the best engineers in the world. The team spent the entire morning analyzing the data, poring over the traffic simulations, and reviewing the AI model's performance. Charlie, despite being the youngest in the room, quickly found a pattern in the anomalies that the team had missed. There was a specific type of scenario, high-density, unpredictable traffic situations, where the AI predictions were breaking down. "Look here," Charlie said, pointing to the screen where a cluster of cars on a busy freeway was causing the AI system to falter. "The model doesn't account for the erratic behavior of human drivers when traffic conditions change suddenly. It's relying too much on past data without factoring in the human element." Greg and the senior engineers exchanged looks of realization. Charlie had cracked it. He had found the flaw in the AI's logic that no one else had spotted. "Charlie, that's brilliant!" Greg exclaimed. "You've identified a gap in our model. We've been focused too much on the data that's being fed into the system, but we haven't accounted for the unpredictability of human drivers. We need to redesign the model to adapt more dynamically." Over the next several days, Charlie worked closely with the engineers to rebuild the AI model. They incorporated his insights and adjusted the algorithms to better anticipate the unpredictable behaviors of human drivers. The process was intense, with long hours spent testing, recalibrating, and iterating. But Charlie never lost focus. He knew the stakes. Every adjustment, every tweak, brought them closer to solving the problem. One evening, after a particularly grueling round of testing, the results finally came in. The AI model, now updated with Charlie's suggestions, was performing flawlessly. It not only predicted traffic patterns with greater accuracy, but it also adapted seamlessly to the unpredictable nature of human driving behavior. "We did it," Greg said, his voice full of pride. "Charlie, you've just solved one of the toughest challenges we've faced. This is going to make a huge difference for the self-driving cars on the road." Charlie smiled, a sense of relief washing over him. He had done it. His first real-world challenge had been met and overcome. It wasn't just about solving the technical problem, it was about knowing that his work could help make the road safer for everyone. The next morning, the team presented their findings to Elon Musk and the senior leadership team at Tesla. Charlie, despite his nerves, stood alongside Greg as they explained how the new AI model would work and how it could improve the performance of Tesla's self-driving cars in high-density traffic situations. Elon listened intently, nodding as the engineers spoke. When they finished, he leaned back in his chair and turned to Charlie. "I have to say, I'm impressed," Elon said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of his words. "What you did here was nothing short of extraordinary. You didn't just fix the issue, you found a solution that no one else had even considered. You've got a gift, Charlie. And we're lucky to have you here." Charlie felt a rush of pride. Elon Musk, the very person he had admired for years, was praising him. It felt surreal, but it was also grounding. He had proven to himself, and to everyone else, that he was more than just a prodigy. He was a valuable contributor to one of the most innovative companies in the world. After the meeting, Charlie took a moment to reflect on everything that had happened. Just a few months ago, he had been a kid competing in a global AI competition, hoping to make a name for himself. Now, he was working alongside the best engineers in the world, solving problems that could change the future of transportation. But as proud as he was of his accomplishments, he knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead was long, filled with new challenges and obstacles. There was so much more to learn, so much more to create. And Charlie was ready for it. That evening, as Charlie walked back to his temporary apartment in Palo Alto, he couldn't help but smile. His journey had just begun. And no matter how many challenges he faced, he was determined to make a difference. The world had only just begun to see what he could do. Charlie's newfound success at Tesla was exhilarating, but with every victory came new challenges and expectations. The team's self-driving AI model had just been significantly improved thanks to Charlie's breakthrough, and the company was preparing for a major public demonstration. All eyes were on Tesla to show that their self-driving technology wasn't just a concept but a real, reliable system that could safely navigate the world's most chaotic roadways. With the pressure mounting, Charlie could feel the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. This wasn't just another project anymore, it was a defining moment for Tesla, for the future of autonomous driving, and for him personally. The day before the demonstration, Charlie and the team were gathered in the War Room, a large conference room in the heart of Tesla's headquarters. The atmosphere was electric, a mix of excitement and anxiety. Engineers were rushing to finalize the software, while the public relations team prepared for the media blitz that would follow. Greg stood at the front, outlining the final details of the demonstration. "Tomorrow is huge," Greg said, pacing in front of the whiteboard. "We'll have a live demonstration of our self-driving cars on a real urban route, navigating through heavy traffic, stoplights, pedestrians, and everything in between. Our AI must perform flawlessly. There can't be any hiccups." Charlie's heart raced. He knew the stakes were high, and he wasn't just an observer in this scenario, he was a crucial part of the team that had made this possible. He couldn't afford to let anyone down. "We've had great progress thanks to Charlie's breakthrough," Greg continued, turning to him with a proud smile. "But we still need to fine-tune a few things before tomorrow's demonstration." Charlie nodded, focusing intently on the screen in front of him. He had already checked and rechecked the AI's algorithms, but something still didn't feel right. It was the last 10% of the system, the fine details, that could make or break the demonstration. That evening, Charlie stayed behind after everyone else had left. He sat alone in the AI lab, running the final simulations over and over again, analyzing every minute detail. As the hours ticked by, his exhaustion started to catch up with him. But he couldn't stop now. He couldn't let this slip through his fingers. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spotted something, a subtle flaw in the predictive model. It was a tiny discrepancy that the human eye could easily miss, but it could cause problems in certain traffic situations. It was a small issue, but in this game, small things mattered. With a sense of urgency, Charlie adjusted the model one final time, reran the simulation, and watched the results. The AI responded perfectly. It was ready. The next morning, Charlie was up before the sun, a mix of anticipation and nervous energy swirling inside him. He met with Greg and the rest of the team for a quick debrief before heading out to the test site. The media were already gathered, their cameras poised and ready to capture every moment. Charlie, despite his young age, had become accustomed to the attention by now, but this was different. Today, people weren't just going to look at him as the prodigy or the kid genius, they were going to see him as a part of something bigger. He was part of a team that was about to show the world how far technology had come. The demonstration began. The sleek Tesla vehicles, equipped with the updated AI, were lined up and ready to take on the course. Charlie stood alongside Greg, watching as the cars slowly rolled forward. The test route was a heavily trafficked downtown area, filled with tight turns, construction zones, and pedestrians crossing at every corner. It was a nightmare for any self-driving vehicle, but for the Tesla cars equipped with Charlie's AI, it was the perfect test. The cars accelerated smoothly, navigating through the traffic with incredible precision. The AI system responded to every change in the road conditions, adjusting speed, braking at the perfect moment, and even anticipating the actions of pedestrians. Charlie couldn't help but smile as he watched the cars perform flawlessly. But then, just as the cars approached a particularly difficult intersection, a pedestrian stepped off the curb unexpectedly, right into the path of one of the vehicles. The crowd gasped. The car slammed on the brakes, skidding slightly but coming to a complete stop just inches from the pedestrian. It was a perfect stop, a testament to the AI's ability to process complex, real-time data and make split-second decisions. The crowd erupted in applause, and Charlie felt a rush of pride. The system had passed the ultimate test. After the demonstration, Charlie was surrounded by reporters, eager to get his thoughts on the success of the AI system. He was no stranger to the media frenzy by now, but today felt different. Today, he wasn't just a competitor or a prodigy. He was a key player in a groundbreaking achievement. "Charlie," one of the reporters asked, "what was going through your mind when you saw the car come to a stop at the intersection?" Charlie paused, choosing his words carefully. I was confident in the system. We've put a lot of work into making sure the AI can handle unpredictable situations. It wasn't just about technology, it was about understanding human behavior and reacting to it in real time. It's not perfect, but it's a step forward. Do you think this is the future of driving? Another reporter asked. Charlie smiled. I think we're getting closer every day. There's still a lot of work to be done, but this is a big step in the right direction. As the day wound down and the crowd dispersed, Charlie found a quiet corner of the test site. He couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. The last few months had been a whirlwind, from winning the global AI competition to working alongside some of the brightest minds in technology. And now, he had just played a key role in what could be the future of transportation. But there was no time to rest. This success was just the beginning. There were still bigger challenges ahead, and Charlie was ready to face them head-on. As Charlie left the test site that day, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Elon Musk. You did great today, Charlie. Proud to have you on the team. Charlie smiled, his heart swelling with pride. He had come a long way, but he knew that this was just the beginning of something even greater. The pressure was mounting, but Charlie had proven that he could rise to the challenge. And he was only getting started. The aftermath of the public demonstration had been nothing short of overwhelming. The media coverage was massive, with headlines in every major tech outlet praising Tesla's self-driving technology. The AI system, powered by Charlie's breakthrough, had proven itself in one of the most challenging environments imaginable. The world was watching, and the expectations for what came next were enormous. Charlie knew that the next steps would be crucial. There was no going back now. The pressure that had once felt like an abstract idea now weighed heavily on his shoulders. But despite the overwhelming attention, he stayed focused on the task ahead. He had come this far, and he wasn't going to let anything distract him. The day after the demonstration, Charlie sat in a meeting room with Greg and several senior engineers. A giant screen at the front displayed a map of the United States, with various cities marked in red and green. Each city represented a location where Tesla's self-driving technology could be tested in real-world conditions, ranging from urban jungles to rural highways. We've got an incredible opportunity here, Greg said, looking at Charlie. Tesla is planning a nationwide rollout of the self-driving cars, but we need to fine-tune the system even more. We need to make sure it can handle a variety of driving conditions, everything from the stop-and-go traffic in New York City to the open highways in the Midwest. Charlie nodded. The reality of the situation was setting in. This wasn't just a small-scale project anymore. The technology he had helped create was about to change the world, and there was no room for mistakes. Greg turned to the screen and highlighted a cluster of red dots on the map. These are the areas where we've encountered the most problems. Traffic patterns are different in every region, and we need to ensure that the AI is adaptable enough to handle them all. Charlie's mind began to race. He thought back to all the different traffic scenarios they had tested in the past. He had already solved the problem of unpredictable pedestrian behavior, but now they were talking about something much bigger, regional nuances in driving that could make or break the success of the technology. The next few weeks were a blur of intense work. Charlie, along with Greg and the team, traveled across the country, visiting cities to test the AI in real-world environments. Each trip brought new challenges, from the frenetic pace of San Francisco's streets to the sprawling, lonely highways of Nevada. The AI had to adapt to different climates, cultures, and driving styles, and Charlie was at the center of it all, tweaking and improving the system as they went. But the more they tested, the more Charlie realized that no two places were the same. In New York, the AI had to deal with a constant barrage of honking cars and jaywalking pedestrians. In Los Angeles, it was the traffic jams that never seemed to end. In small towns in the Midwest, the AI struggled to predict the behavior of drivers who seemed to follow an unwritten set of rules, not always obeying traffic lights or signs. I never imagined how different things could be from city to city, Charlie said to Greg one evening after a particularly frustrating day of testing in Chicago. Greg laughed softly, rubbing his eyes. Yeah, it's one of those things you can't truly appreciate until you're in the trenches. But that's what makes this so exciting. You're creating something that has to be adaptable to all these scenarios. It's not just about technology. It's about understanding the real world and how people drive. Charlie couldn't agree more. He had always been fascinated by human behavior, the way people acted, thought, and reacted in unpredictable ways. And now, he was using that understanding to shape a piece of technology that could change the way people lived. As the months passed, the team refined the AI, each iteration bringing them closer to perfection. The system became faster, more responsive, and more capable of navigating the most chaotic environments. But as the project neared its final stages, another challenge emerged, one that none of them had anticipated. It came in the form of a new competitor. A rival tech company, known for its aggressive approach to artificial intelligence and self-driving cars, had been quietly working on its own version of the technology. And now, they were ready to unveil it. Charlie first heard about it from Greg during a late-night meeting in Tesla's headquarters. The news hit like a thunderclap. "There's a new player in town," Greg said, his voice tight with concern. "We've just seen some leaked footage of their self-driving cars in action. And they look impressive, really impressive." Charlie felt a cold shiver run down his spine. For months, Tesla had been the undisputed leader in the field of self-driving technology, but now, there was a challenger. And this wasn't just any challenger. This company had deep pockets, a vast network, and a reputation for innovation. "They're moving fast," Greg continued, "and they're going to be a serious threat. We have to accelerate our timeline if we want to stay ahead." Charlie stared at the screen in front of him, where the competitors' self-driving cars were shown navigating the same chaotic environments that Tesla had been working on. The cars were impressive, no doubt, but Charlie couldn't help but feel a surge of determination. He had always thrived on competition, and now, more than ever, he was ready to prove that Tesla's technology was second to none. That night, as Charlie lay in bed, he couldn't help but replay the events of the day in his mind. The pressure was on, and the competition was fierce. But Charlie wasn't the kind of person to back down from a challenge. He had come too far and worked too hard to let someone else steal his thunder. The next morning, he called Greg and the team together. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," he said, his voice steady. "But I believe in what we're doing here. We've got the best technology, and we've got the best people. Let's show the world what we're capable of." The team rallied around Charlie, fueled by the same determination. It wasn't just about beating the competition. It was about pushing the boundaries of what was possible, about creating a future that was safer, smarter, and more efficient. The world was watching. And Charlie was ready to lead the charge. The appearance of a new competitor in the self-driving car race was like a lightning bolt, electrifying Tesla's entire operation. The competitor, known as Orbital AI, had built a reputation for cutting-edge innovation and a no-holds-barred approach to competition. They were known for breaking rules, pushing boundaries, and getting results fast. And now, their self-driving technology was threatening to eclipse Tesla's hard-won achievements. Charlie sat in the Tesla war room, staring at the screen where the competitor's announcement video played on loop. Orbital AI's cars had demonstrated remarkable agility, managing to navigate complex environments with seeming ease. Their cars were sleek, their system fast, and their AI responsive. It was exactly what Tesla had been striving for, and it was good. Really good. Greg entered the room and clapped Charlie on the shoulder. "I know it's a lot to take in," he said, his voice serious. "But we can't let them get into our heads. We've been working at this for years, and we've got something unique." Charlie nodded, but the pressure was undeniable. Tesla had been the leader in self-driving tech, and now, it seemed as though they were no longer the only one in the race. "We've got a few weeks to finish the latest updates," Greg continued. "We can't afford to slow down now. The competition is fierce, but we've got the edge, we just need to sharpen it. Charlie's mind was already racing. The challenge was no longer just about building a great AI, it was about staying ahead of a competitor who was breathing down their necks. They had to push harder, faster, smarter, and Charlie was determined to ensure Tesla kept its crown. The next few weeks were nothing short of a blur. Charlie and the team worked day and night, running tests, fine-tuning algorithms, and breaking down each scenario with obsessive precision. The work was grueling, but the team rallied. Greg often said that their secret weapon was their ability to work together under pressure. They weren't just a collection of brilliant minds, they were a family, each person holding the others up when the workload became too much. But as the testing continued, Charlie noticed something. Despite their best efforts, the orbital AI cars were proving to be a formidable force. They adapted quickly, their cars maneuvering with lightning-fast reflexes. Tesla's AI was strong, but there were certain areas where orbital systems seemed to outperform it. The one thing that stood out to Charlie was the competitor's superior predictive ability in chaotic traffic situations. As days turned into weeks, the competitive tension began to take a toll on the team. Stress levels were high, with tempers occasionally flaring. Charlie had never seen Greg this tense before. "We're behind," Greg muttered one evening as they reviewed the latest test data. "Orbital's AI is outperforming ours in urban environments. We're missing something." Charlie sat back, absorbing Greg's words. The data didn't lie. They were falling short in one crucial area, the ability of the AI to predict human behavior in the most unpredictable traffic conditions. It was as though Orbital had a step ahead, but the truth was that Tesla had been so focused on fine-tuning their own technology that they hadn't considered the behavior of the average driver as thoroughly as they should have. Charlie had an idea. "I think I know what we're missing," he said, looking up from the screen. "We've been so focused on perfecting the car's reaction to traffic that we haven't spent enough time analyzing how human drivers make split-second decisions. The system needs to predict more than just the vehicles around it. It needs to anticipate driver intent, the subtle signs that tell you what a driver is going to do next." Greg stared at him for a moment. "You're talking about predictive human behavior. That's a huge leap, Charlie. We'd need to rethink our entire approach." Charlie nodded. "Exactly. But if we can crack this, we'll have a system that's not just reactive, it'll be proactive. It'll be able to predict what drivers are going to do before they do it." Greg was quiet for a moment, considering the idea. Finally, he spoke. "It's risky. But it's our best shot. Let's give it everything we've got." Over the next week, Charlie and the team set out to recalibrate their AI's approach. They needed to create a more nuanced predictive model, one that took into account everything from the subtle movements of a driver's hands on the wheel to the slight changes in their car's speed and direction. They spent countless hours analyzing traffic footage, examining driver behaviors, and running simulations to account for every variable they could think of. Charlie was on edge. There was no time to waste. He couldn't afford to let Orbital's technology get ahead. The team was working around the clock, making adjustments, running tests, and reworking their code. One night, after the team had left for the evening, Charlie stayed behind. He ran the final test on a new predictive algorithm, one that he felt might finally give them the edge. As the simulation played out, he watched intently, his heart pounding in his chest. The AI's response to the simulated traffic was perfect. It predicted the behavior of each driver down to the finest detail, adjusting the car's speed and trajectory with flawless precision. It wasn't just reacting anymore, it was anticipating. Charlie sat back in his chair, breathing a sigh of relief. They had done it. They had cracked it. The next day, Charlie presented the updated AI to Greg and the team. He watched as they ran through the simulations, their faces lighting up with excitement as the AI executed each maneuver flawlessly. "This is it," Greg said, his voice filled with awe. "This is what we've been waiting for." Charlie smiled, feeling a sense of pride wash over him. They had done it. Tesla's self-driving cars were now more intelligent than ever, able to predict human drivers' behavior and adapt on the fly. They had gained the edge they needed to stay ahead of orbital AI. A few days later, the team presented their updated AI to Elon Musk. The pressure in the room was palpable. Elon listened intently, his usual poker face betraying no hint of emotion. When the presentation was over, there was a long silence. Finally, Elon spoke. "This is it. This is what will change everything." Charlie felt a wave of relief, followed by a surge of pride. They had done it. Tesla was back on top. The race wasn't over. Orbital AI was still a formidable competitor, and the self-driving car market was only getting started. But for the first time in weeks, Charlie felt like he could breathe again. They had regained the lead. For now, the world was watching, and Tesla was leading the charge into the future of transportation. But Charlie knew that the next challenge was always just around the corner. And he was ready for whatever came next. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? It had been a few weeks since the team at Tesla had regained the upper hand in the race for self-driving supremacy. The new predictive AI had shown its brilliance in the final tests, and Tesla's self-driving cars were now considered the most advanced in the world. However, despite the victory, Charlie felt a growing sense of unease. The competition with orbital AI was far from over, and their CEO, Marcus Wren, had made it clear that they would stop at nothing to surpass Tesla's innovation. Charlie's phone buzzed, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a message from Greg. "We need to talk. Urgent. Meet me in the lab ASAP." Charlie's stomach tightened. If Greg was calling an emergency meeting, it couldn't be good. Without hesitation, he grabbed his laptop and headed to the lab. When Charlie arrived, the atmosphere in the room was tense. The team was gathered around the central table, their faces grim. Greg stood by the whiteboard, which was filled with complex algorithms, diagrams, and flowcharts. The air was thick with anxiety. "What's going on?" Charlie asked, setting his laptop down on the table. Greg turned to him, his expression serious. "We've got a serious problem." Charlie felt his pulse quicken. "What happened?" Greg gestured to the screen. Orbital AI's CEO, Marcus Wren, just announced that they've successfully completed an exclusive deal with the Department of Transportation. They've been granted a federal contract to deploy their self-driving vehicles on public roads nationwide. Charlie stared at the screen in disbelief. A federal contract meant that Orbital AI now had the legal backing and resources to accelerate their rollout of autonomous vehicles. It was a game changer, one that could put them ahead of Tesla for good. "Wait, that's not possible," Charlie said, shaking his head. "We've been working with government agencies on testing. How could they bypass us like this?" Greg sighed. "It's a calculated move. They've been lobbying behind the scenes for months. And now they've got the backing of the government. It's going to be hard for us to catch up, especially since they'll be able to deploy their vehicles in real-world conditions without the same level of oversight." Charlie paced the room, his mind racing. He had known that orbital AI was dangerous, but this move was a whole new level of competition. They now had both the technology and the legal advantage. "This isn't just about better AI anymore," Charlie muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "It's about who has the access. They've got the green light to deploy nationwide while we're still battling it out with state-level regulations." Greg nodded, his frustration palpable. "Exactly. They'll be able to scale faster than we can. If we don't act now, they'll have a serious head start." Charlie stood still for a moment, the weight of the situation sinking in. He knew that Tesla couldn't just keep building the best self-driving cars. They needed to leverage every possible advantage to stay ahead of orbital AI. But the question was, how? "Is there any way we can counter this?" Charlie asked. Greg looked up, his eyes narrowing with determination. There might be one way. But it's risky. Charlie raised an eyebrow. Go on. We've been working on a next-gen AI system, a completely new architecture that can outpace anything Orbital has, Greg explained. It's in the early stages, but it's powerful. If we can accelerate the development of this new system and integrate it into our cars, we could have a product that's not only more advanced but also capable of handling regulatory hurdles faster. Charlie's mind started to whirl. How much time do we need to make this work? Greg exhaled. At least 6 months, but with the right focus, we could shave that down to 4. 4 months? Charlie asked, incredulous. Are you sure that's possible? Greg shrugged. We've got the talent, and we've got the resources. It's going to take everything we've got, but if anyone can do it, it's this team. Charlie looked around at the faces of the engineers in the room. There was an unspoken agreement between them all. They weren't about to let Orbital AI take the lead. Not now. Not after everything they'd worked for. All right, Charlie said, his voice steady. We go all in on this. 4 months. No distractions. We take the lead back. Are we all in? The team nodded in unison, a renewed sense of purpose igniting in their eyes. It was time for another high-stakes push. The clock was ticking. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Charlie and Greg worked tirelessly with the team to accelerate the development of the new AI system. It was a monumental task. They had to completely rework the underlying architecture, focusing on faster decision-making algorithms, better predictive models, and improved real-time processing capabilities. Charlie could feel the weight of the clock ticking down on them. Every decision they made had to be precise. There was no room for error. As the days passed, Charlie found himself buried in code, running simulations at all hours of the day and night. The team rallied around him, working in shifts, their energy fueled by the shared goal of staying ahead. They knew that if they didn't succeed, they could lose everything. But there were moments when doubt crept in. The new AI system was powerful, but it wasn't perfect. Some of the predictive models didn't behave as expected in certain edge cases. They needed to fine-tune everything, and fast. One night, Charlie sat at his desk, running yet another set of tests. The results came in, and this time, the AI was responding faster and more accurately than ever before. But the real test would be when the cars hit the road. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. The weight of the responsibility was heavy on him, but he knew that this was the final push. There was no going back. Greg, Charlie called out, I think we've got it. Greg walked over, a look of cautious optimism on his face. Are you sure? Charlie nodded. It's ready. We're going to test it in the field tomorrow. The following morning, Tesla's new AI was put through its paces in real-world driving scenarios. The team had chosen a dense urban area as their test site, a place where traffic was chaotic and unpredictable, the perfect environment to put the AI's new capabilities to the test. Charlie watched nervously as the first test car took off down the street, its sensors whirring as it navigated the maze of cars and pedestrians. For the first few minutes, everything seemed to be going smoothly. The car moved with impressive fluidity, anticipating every turn and obstacle with ease. Then, a truck unexpectedly veered into the lane. The AI's sensors reacted instantaneously, calculating the best evasive maneuver, and the car swerved safely out of the way. Charlie exhaled in relief. This was it. Tesla was back on top. The days felt like weeks as Charlie and the Tesla team continued to push forward with their new AI system. The clock was ticking, and Orbital AI's federal deployment was now only months away. If they didn't have a breakthrough soon, they would risk being left behind. But despite the pressure, the team remained focused, driven by a singular purpose, to prove that Tesla was still the king of self-driving cars. Charlie sat in the war room, staring at the live feed from the latest round of field tests. The new AI system had shown incredible promise, but the real test had always been the unpredictability of the road. Could they truly depend on it to navigate the chaos of everyday traffic? The team had spent days testing it in various conditions, but nothing prepared them for the unknowns of real-world driving. "All right, team," Greg's voice broke through Charlie's thoughts. "This is it. We're going to run one final test on the new AI system. If it can pass this, it's ready for deployment." Charlie looked up at the screen. The test site was a notoriously busy intersection in downtown San Francisco, an area infamous for chaotic, last-minute lane changes, cyclists darting between cars, and pedestrians who couldn't seem to follow the crosswalk signs. If the AI could navigate this, it could handle anything. "Let's make this count," Charlie said, standing up from his desk. "Everyone, make sure the cars are tuned to the latest build. We can't afford any setbacks now." The test was scheduled to start at dawn. As the first rays of sunlight touched the city's skyline, the Tesla team gathered around the large screens in the war room. They watched anxiously as the first self-driving car, equipped with the new AI, entered the chaotic intersection. The AI reacted swiftly, predicting the movements of pedestrians and surrounding cars with extraordinary precision. Charlie felt a surge of hope. Every turn, every stop was flawless. But then, as the car neared the busiest part of the intersection, a cyclist swerved out of nowhere, cutting directly in front of the vehicle. "Don't panic," Charlie whispered under his breath. The car's AI adjusted seamlessly, veering slightly to the right and braking just enough to avoid the cyclist. It was a near miss, but the car reacted perfectly. Greg's voice crackled through the comms. "It's working, Charlie. It's really working." Charlie's heart raced. The tension in the room lifted slightly, but the next hurdle was even more dangerous, an unexpected construction barrier that had just popped up in the middle of the street. The AI was given no prior knowledge of the obstacle. It was a true test of its ability to react in a split second. Charlie held his breath. The car's sensors locked onto the barrier, and the AI immediately began rerouting, calculating alternate paths within milliseconds. As the car swerved and dodged around the construction zone, Charlie couldn't help but smile. They had done it. This was the breakthrough they'd been working for. The car finished the test without incident. The team erupted in applause. Back at the office, the weight of what had just happened began to settle on Charlie. They had succeeded in making the AI more responsive, more predictive, and, most importantly, capable of handling unexpected obstacles with ease. But the real challenge was still ahead, deploying it on a massive scale. "All right, we've got the edge we need," Greg said, his face illuminated by the glow of the monitors. "Now, it's time to hit the road. We need a public demonstration, and it's got to be perfect." Charlie nodded. The public demonstration was critical. If Tesla could show that its AI was not only capable but superior to orbital system, they could secure the public's trust. It wasn't just about the tech anymore, it was about perception. "We're going to need the perfect location," Charlie said, pacing the room. "We want to show off the car's abilities in a real-world environment. No simulations. It needs to be something that will turn heads." Greg thought for a moment. "What about the Vegas Strip?" Charlie froze. "The Vegas Strip? Yeah. High traffic, unpredictable pedestrians, tons of tourists, and we could have hundreds of cameras tracking the cars. It's the perfect stage for a public demonstration." Charlie smiled. "Let's do it." Preparations began immediately. They reached out to local authorities to secure the necessary permits, worked with marketing teams to create a promotional campaign, and made sure that all the logistics for the demonstration were in place. It was a massive undertaking, but Charlie knew that it was their best shot to showcase Tesla's self-driving cars in the best possible light. The day of the demonstration arrived, and the team was buzzing with excitement. The event was held on a Sunday morning to avoid the worst of the foot traffic, but even so, the Las Vegas Strip was a maze of moving people, cars, and distractions. Tesla's fleet of cars was lined up, each vehicle loaded with cameras and sensors, ready for the public to witness its true capabilities. Charlie stood at the front of the staging area, dressed in a black Tesla jacket, his eyes scanning the bustling strip. The air was hot, dry, and full of anticipation. The event was live-streamed to millions of viewers, and every move they made was being analyzed. As the first car rolled out, the crowd watched in awe. Pedestrians were filming on their phones, curious to see if the car would really drive itself without a human behind the wheel. The AI navigated the busy streets flawlessly, dodging tourists, reacting to sudden changes in traffic, and even handling a series of unpredictable lane shifts. Then, as the car approached a pedestrian crossing, a group of tourists suddenly rushed into the street, unaware of the approaching car. The AI responded instantly, slowing down and smoothly steering to avoid them without so much as a bump. The crowd gasped, a collective sigh of relief filling the air. Charlie's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment they had been waiting for, and the car had delivered. The demonstration continued without a hitch. The cars flawlessly navigated complex intersections, handled unexpected detours, and even parked themselves in crowded spaces. The viewers were in awe. Tesla's AI was not only a marvel of technology, it was safe, reliable, and ready for the road. As the final car pulled back into the staging area, Charlie felt a surge of triumph. This was a victory, but he knew it wasn't the end of the battle. Orbital AI wasn't going to back down. But for today, Tesla had proven its worth, and they were back in the race. Later that night, as Charlie sat in his hotel room, the numbers started to pour in. Views on the live stream were off the charts, and social media was abuzz with excitement. The demonstration had exceeded everyone's expectations. Tesla's name was trending worldwide. But there was one message that stood out among the rest, an encrypted email from an anonymous source, with the subject line, Marcus Wren's next move. Charlie's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He clicked it open. I know what Orbital AI is planning. And I think you'll want to know. Charlie's stomach tightened. The successful demonstration had barely been over a few hours, and now Greg's message implied there was already a new threat. He grabbed his jacket and headed out the door, quickly making his way to the lobby. The team was waiting for him in the conference room. As Charlie entered the room, Greg was standing near the large screen, his face taut with anxiety. The others were gathered around, and the mood was tense. Charlie didn't need to ask, he could feel it in the air. What's going on? Charlie asked, walking over to the screen. Greg turned and clicked a few buttons, bringing up a video feed. It was a recording of the live-streamed demonstration on the Vegas Strip. At first, it seemed like just another highlight, the smooth navigation of Tesla's self-driving car, flawlessly avoiding pedestrians and traffic. But then, the screen cut to a new feed. It was a recording of the exact same stretch of road, but this time, the car was an Orbital AI model. And it was navigating with ease, dodging pedestrians, avoiding traffic, and even overtaking a delivery truck in an impressive feat of precision. This can't be happening, Charlie muttered under his breath. Are you telling me that Orbital AI was in the same place at the same time? Greg nodded grimly. I don't know how they did it, but they've somehow been monitoring our demonstration. That's not the worst part. Charlie looked at Greg, confused. What do you mean? Greg pointed to a specific frame in the video, zooming in on an image of the Orbital AI car. The sleek design looked almost identical to Tesla's own self-driving cars, but there was something subtle about it, a small modification on the front bumper, a discrete sensor upgrade that hadn't been in Orbital AI's public versions. They've been watching us, Greg said, his voice thick with disbelief. They've reverse-engineered Tesla's system and made their own adjustments. It's like they've stolen some of our technology. Charlie's blood ran cold. Orbital AI had always been a formidable competitor, but this was a new level of audacity. They had taken Tesla's groundbreaking demonstration and used it to create their own copycat technology. This isn't just a coincidence, Charlie said, his voice low. They've been planning this from the beginning. The next few hours were a blur of strategy meetings and discussions. Tesla's legal team was on high alert, scrambling to figure out whether Orbital AI's actions constituted intellectual property theft. Engineers worked around the clock to analyze the video footage, searching for any clue that might reveal exactly how Orbital had infiltrated their operation. But despite the fury and frustration, Charlie couldn't help but wonder, how did they get in? The only people who knew about the specifics of the demonstration were the core team members and a select few at Tesla headquarters. It seemed almost impossible that someone from Orbital AI could have infiltrated Tesla's ranks. But the evidence was undeniable. Charlie sat at his desk, deep in thought, replaying the events in his mind. They had been so careful, so meticulous, in their planning. Yet somehow, Orbital AI had found a way to get ahead. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from an anonymous source. "I know what Orbital AI is planning next. And you need to move fast. They've got something big in the works." Charlie's heart skipped a beat. He clicked open the message, his eyes scanning the text quickly. Orbital AI has partnered with a secretive tech firm known as Nexus Robotics. They've been working on a new prototype, one that's designed to take full control of city traffic systems. Think beyond just self-driving cars. They plan to control traffic lights, road signs, and even public transportation. Their goal is to create a fully integrated autonomous ecosystem, and they're going to launch it in the next 6 months. If they pull it off, they'll own the future of mobility. Charlie's mind raced. This was beyond self-driving cars. If Orbital AI and Nexus Robotics succeeded in controlling the entire urban traffic system, it would be a game-changer. They wouldn't just be competitors in the self-driving car space. They'd be the dominant force in global transportation. Greg walked into the room, his face grim. "I just spoke with the legal team. We have no proof that Orbital AI stole our technology, but the timing and the similarities are impossible to ignore. We need to prepare for a fight." Charlie stood up, a new fire burning in his chest. He had known that Orbital AI would be ruthless, but this was more than just business. This was a full-scale war for the future of transportation. "We need to find out everything we can about Nexus Robotics," Charlie said. "If they're behind this, we need to know their every move. Let's get a team on it." Greg nodded. "I'll get the research team on it right away." The next few days were spent in a flurry of activity. Tesla's legal and security teams dug into Nexus Robotics, trying to uncover any connections to Orbital AI. Meanwhile, Charlie and the engineering team worked tirelessly to strengthen their AI, knowing that the clock was ticking. Orbital AI was not only playing dirty, they were playing smart, and if Tesla didn't respond quickly, they could lose everything. But Charlie wasn't about to let that happen. Late one night, as Charlie sat in his office, he got another message, this time from his old friend and mentor, David Alvarez. David had been one of Tesla's early engineers before moving on to work with various startups. "Charlie, I've been hearing things about Nexus Robotics. They're not just a tech firm, they've got military-grade security protocols and backing from some very powerful investors. You're not up against just Orbital AI anymore. There's a whole other layer to this fight." Charlie's hand trembled as he read the message. Military-grade security? He muttered to himself. This wasn't just about self-driving cars. It was about control, about power. "I need to meet with David," Charlie thought aloud. "We need to get to the bottom of this, and fast." The next day, Charlie flew out to meet David at a secluded research facility outside of Silicon Valley. When they sat down, David wasted no time. "I've been tracking Nexus Robotics for a while now," David said, leaning in. "They've been working on autonomous infrastructure for years, but they've been doing it under the radar. They've got a prototype that can integrate with city grids, optimize traffic flow, and even control the timing of traffic lights. Think about it, if Orbital AI gets their hands on that, they'll have control over every single vehicle on the road." Charlie's stomach twisted. So, they don't just want self-driving cars. They want the entire transportation system. David nodded. Exactly. And if they succeed, they'll control the future of mobility, and there won't be anything anyone can do to stop them. Charlie's mind was racing. Tesla had always been at the forefront of innovation, but this was something entirely new. It wasn't just about making better cars anymore. Orbital AI and Nexus Robotics were playing a different game, one that would change the world forever. And if Tesla didn't act now, they could lose everything. The drive from the secluded research facility back to Tesla's headquarters felt like the longest journey of Charlie's life. His mind was reeling from the conversation with David. Nexus Robotics wasn't just a competitor. They were a threat to everything Tesla had worked for. If Orbital AI succeeded in partnering with Nexus, they wouldn't just control the future of autonomous vehicles, they would control the entire transportation infrastructure, something that no company had ever dreamed of before. Charlie sat in the back of the Tesla Model X, staring out at the rapidly passing scenery. The world outside seemed so normal, so peaceful. But inside, a storm was brewing. His thoughts kept circling back to the question that was consuming him: how could they stop this? Back at Tesla's headquarters, Charlie immediately convened a meeting with his core team. The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure to find a solution had never been more intense. As Charlie entered the conference room, he could already feel the tension in the air. Greg, Zoe, and several key engineers were seated around the table, waiting for him to speak. Charlie took a deep breath and began. We've just learned that Orbital AI has partnered with Nexus Robotics. They've been developing autonomous infrastructure systems that can integrate with traffic grids and optimize everything from traffic lights to vehicle flow. This is no longer just a battle over self-driving cars. We're talking about the future of global transportation. The room went quiet. Everyone knew the magnitude of what Charlie was saying. If Orbital AI succeeded, they would have the power to not only control every self-driving car on the road, but also the infrastructure that made those cars possible. They would dominate not just one industry, but every industry connected to transportation, logistics, shipping, ride-sharing, delivery services, and more. Zoe was the first to speak, her voice sharp and serious. How close are they to rolling this out? Do we have time to stop them? Charlie looked at her, his expression grim. We don't know exactly, but we do know that their prototype is ready. And if they're moving as fast as I think they are, they could be ready for deployment within the next few months. That fast? Greg asked, disbelief in his voice. But we're nowhere near prepared for something like that. We don't have the luxury of waiting, Charlie replied, his voice firm. We need to act, and we need to act now. The team fell into a heavy silence. They all understood the gravity of the situation. The clock was ticking, and every day that passed brought them closer to a world where Tesla's innovations were rendered irrelevant, a world controlled by Orbital AI and Nexus Robotics. We need to gather more intel, Greg suggested. We need to understand exactly how Nexus Robotics' infrastructure system works and whether there's a weakness we can exploit. Right, Charlie said, nodding. We need to infiltrate Nexus Robotics. If we can get our hands on their blueprints or code, we can start building countermeasures. Zoe crossed her arms, clearly concerned. But how do we infiltrate a company that's known for its military-grade security? It's not like we can just walk in and hope to find a way in. Charlie paused for a moment, thinking. We don't need to walk in. We need to think smarter. We need someone inside. The plan came together quickly. Tesla's security team would work to find any weaknesses in Nexus Robotics' online presence, any small gap they could exploit to gain access to critical information. Meanwhile, Charlie and Greg reached out to a contact they had in the hacker community, a former Tesla engineer turned cybersecurity expert named Maya. Maya had always been an unconventional choice for Tesla, but she had proven time and again that she could navigate the most secure networks. If anyone could get them the intel they needed, it was her. A few days later, Maya flew into Tesla's headquarters under a veil of secrecy. She was known for her no-nonsense attitude and her ability to break into even the most fortified systems, and the team knew that this was their last shot. "Charlie," Maya said, walking into the conference room. "I've been briefed on the situation. You're asking me to break into Nexus Robotics system, right?" Charlie nodded. "Exactly. We need everything they have, their prototypes, their plans, their blueprints. If you can find a way in, we can stop this before it's too late." Maya grinned. "I've been waiting for a challenge like this." Over the next few weeks, the pressure mounted as Tesla's team worked tirelessly to uncover a way to infiltrate Nexus Robotics. Maya spent sleepless nights hacking into networks, trying to find a backdoor into Nexus' highly secured systems. The rest of the team worked on bolstering their own defenses, preparing Tesla's AI for a possible showdown with Orbital AI's latest and greatest version. Then, one evening, as Charlie sat at his desk, he received a notification. Maya had done it. She had found a breach. "I'm in." Charlie met Maya in the war room, where she was working on her laptop. The screen was filled with a flood of data, streaming in from Nexus Robotics' internal systems. "This is it," Maya said, tapping a few keys to bring up the most important files. "Blueprints, research papers, code, it's all here. Looks like Nexus Robotics is integrating their traffic system with Orbital AI's self-driving cars. It's not just a partnership, it's a merger. They're planning to create a fully autonomous infrastructure for entire cities, not just highways, but also public transit systems, intersections, even parking garages. If this goes live, Orbital AI will own every aspect of urban mobility." Charlie stared at the screen, feeling a mixture of awe and terror. If Orbital AI succeeded in executing this plan, the world as they knew it would change forever. "Can you extract everything?" Charlie asked, his voice urgent. Maya nodded. "I've already started. I've got a copy of their master control protocols. This is the key. With this, we can start working on countermeasures. But it's going to take time to decrypt everything." "We don't have time," Charlie replied, pacing the room. "We need to act fast. We need to shut them down before they get any further." The team sprang into action. Armed with the data Maya had extracted, they began crafting a plan to infiltrate Orbital AI's system. But as they dug deeper into the data, they uncovered something that shook them to their core. Nexus Robotics had already begun testing their new autonomous infrastructure in select cities. Cities that were already being equipped with Orbital AI's self-driving cars. Charlie's heart sank. "They're already starting. If we don't do something now, they'll have full control before we even have a chance to react." The urgency of the situation became all too real. They couldn't wait any longer. They needed to launch a counterattack, and they needed to do it now. The discovery of Nexus Robotics' plans had sent shockwaves through Tesla. Charlie could hardly believe that cities around the world were already becoming experimental zones for the very technology that could take control of the global transportation system. If Orbital AI succeeded, it wouldn't just dominate self-driving vehicles, it would control urban landscapes. The future of mobility could soon be in the hands of one company, with devastating consequences for everyone else. Charlie paced the room, deep in thought. The team had uncovered vital information, but the situation had escalated beyond anything they'd anticipated. They had to stop Nexus Robotics and Orbital AI before they could implement their plans. They couldn't afford to wait for a legal battle or hope for a regulatory intervention. It was time to take matters into their own hands. It was well past midnight when Charlie convened a meeting with his core team. The war room was dimly lit, the glow of computer screens casting long shadows across their faces. The team was exhausted, they had been working non-stop for days, but there was no time to rest. "I know we're all tired," Charlie began, his voice steady but urgent, "but we need to think fast. They're already rolling out their infrastructure in several key cities. We don't know which ones yet, but we need to act now. If Orbital AI and Nexus get control, they'll dominate the entire system. They'll lock us out of the future. Zoe looked at him with a furrowed brow. So what's our plan? We're not going to out-hack them at this point. Their system's too advanced. We need a more direct approach. Charlie nodded, knowing the battle was no longer just about digital warfare. It was about taking the fight to the streets. We're going to need to infiltrate their testing sites and sabotage their operations before they go live. We need to disrupt their infrastructure in real time. Greg looked skeptical. Are we talking about full-on sabotage? That's a lot to take on, Charlie. This isn't just a corporate rivalry anymore. These are the big leagues. Charlie's expression hardened. This is our only shot. If they succeed, they'll have the power to control not just the cars, but the entire urban landscape. They'll control the way people move, where they go, how they get there. No one will be able to stop them. We can't let that happen. The team spent the next few days preparing. Charlie pulled in every available resource, including Tesla's best engineers, security personnel, and even the hacker community that Maya had once worked with. They had to be ready for anything. They couldn't afford to fail. Maya was at the forefront of the operation. She had already cracked some of Nexus Robotics' security systems and had begun plotting out their testing locations. It was clear that the real battleground was in the cities where Nexus and Orbital AI were already trialing their autonomous infrastructure. Charlie's plan was to infiltrate these cities, disrupt their systems, and expose their operations before they could fully integrate. They worked quickly, gathering intel on the testing sites and setting up the logistics for their mission. The key was precision. They had to strike fast, hit hard, and leave without a trace. It wasn't long before the team identified the first target, a small city in the heart of California that had become an experimental zone for Nexus Robotics' new infrastructure. The city had already been equipped with Orbital AI's self-driving cars, as well as traffic management systems controlled by Nexus. Their goal was simple: to disable these systems before they could expand into other cities. The night before the mission, Charlie sat alone in his office, staring at a map of the city. He ran over every detail in his mind, rehearsing the plan, checking the timing. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. "Maya," Charlie said, looking up. She entered and closed the door behind her, taking a seat across from him. "I know this is big, Charlie," she said quietly. "But are you sure we're ready for this? The tech we're up against is military grade. They're not going to let us in without a fight." Charlie met her gaze. "I know. But this is our chance to stop them. If we don't do this, we'll lose everything. We don't have a choice." Maya nodded, her face serious. "I'm with you. Just make sure you don't get too close to the fire. We're not invincible." Charlie smiled grimly. "I'm aware of that. But we have to make sure the fire burns their house down." The next morning, Charlie and his team set off for the target city. They were ready. The operation had been planned down to the smallest detail, but the real test would be when they arrived on site. They would have to move quickly and efficiently, with little room for error. The success of their mission could determine the future of the entire transportation industry. As they entered the city, the streets were eerily quiet. The first phase of the operation involved disabling the traffic management systems Nexus had installed, which controlled everything from traffic lights to road signs. The team would have to move in quickly, gain control of the system, and disrupt the entire network. The city had been divided into sectors, each one equipped with the latest in autonomous vehicle technology. Charlie's heart raced as he looked out the window at the sleek, self-driving cars gliding silently down the streets. Every one of them was controlled by Nexus and Orbital AI. If they didn't act fast, this would be the future, a future where human agency had been reduced to nothing. As their convoy approached the heart of the city, the team split into smaller units. Charlie, Greg, and Zoe would head to the central hub where the main control system was located. Maya and a few other team members would hack into the traffic management system and shut it down. They moved with precision, using encrypted communication channels to stay in constant contact. The streets were eerily empty as they approached their target, the headquarters of the local transportation grid. When they arrived at the building, Charlie could feel the tension rising in the air. They had to be quick. Maya's team was already inside, working their way through layers of security. Charlie's team was just outside, preparing to breach the control room. A few minutes later, Maya's voice crackled through the comms, "We're in. I've disabled their network. The city's traffic grid is offline. They're blind." Charlie let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. They had done it. The first phase of the operation was a success. But then, just as Charlie began to feel a glimmer of hope, the unexpected happened. A new voice came through the comms, one that wasn't from his team. "This is Orbital AI Security," the voice said, calm and unnervingly certain. "We've been expecting you." Charlie's heart skipped a beat. The voice on the comms was cold, professional, and unmistakably confident. "We've been expecting you." The words echoed in his mind as his pulse quickened. They had prepared for every possible scenario. They had infiltrated, they had disabled, they had moved quickly. How had Orbital AI known? How had they been able to anticipate their every move? "Who is this?" Charlie demanded, trying to steady his voice. There was no time for hesitation, no room for doubt. He couldn't afford to show weakness, not now. "You can call me Agent Gray," the voice responded. "I'm sure you're aware that Orbital AI values information. And we always keep an eye on those who pose a threat. Like you." Charlie's mind raced as the implications of the situation hit him. They weren't just facing a highly advanced technological rival anymore. They were up against a company that had anticipated every move Tesla would make. Orbital AI wasn't just trying to stay one step ahead. They had been playing a much deeper game. Gray's next words confirmed Charlie's worst fears: "The systems you've just disabled were never meant to be operational. They're decoys. The real infrastructure is elsewhere." "Where?" Zoe's voice cut in through the comms, sharp and full of urgency. Gray's laughter was soft, almost mocking. "You've already triggered a failsafe. Orbital AI's infrastructure has already shifted to a new, more secure network. You're already too late." Charlie felt his stomach drop. He had been sure that disabling the city's traffic grid was the first victory in a series of attacks that would cripple Nexus Robotics and Orbital AI. But now it was clear, they had walked straight into a trap. Their mission was already a failure. "Damn it," Greg muttered under his breath. He slammed his fist against the dashboard, frustration boiling over. How the hell did we miss this? Charlie didn't have an answer. He knew one thing for certain: they had underestimated Orbital AI. And now, they were paying the price. As the team regrouped in their vehicle, Charlie quickly ordered a retreat. They needed to get out of the city before Orbital AI's security could track them down. The tension in the air was palpable. They had been caught in the act, and now they were marked. "Get us out of here," Charlie barked, his voice tight with frustration. The car sped down the quiet streets, the headlights cutting through the darkness as the city they had just infiltrated seemed to mock them. They had come to stop a revolution in the making, but instead, they had unwittingly become part of Orbital AI's plan. "Do we have a plan B?" Greg asked, his voice tight. Charlie shook his head, his thoughts whirling. "We need to figure out how Orbital AI knew we were coming. We need to find out how deep this goes." Maya's voice crackled over the comms. "I'm looking through the logs now. There's a pattern here. Someone tipped them off." Zoe's eyes widened in realization. "Wait. You think there's a mole in Tesla?" "I'm not sure," Maya responded. "But everything I've seen points to someone on the inside feeding them information. It's the only explanation for how they were able to anticipate our every move." The thought sent a chill down Charlie's spine. If they had an insider, someone they trusted, it meant the very core of their operations had been compromised. The ride back to Tesla's headquarters felt like a funeral procession. Each member of the team was lost in their own thoughts, the weight of their failure hanging heavily in the air. Charlie felt a knot tighten in his chest. They had been so close, and now, everything was slipping through their fingers. When they arrived back at the headquarters, Charlie ordered a full lockdown of their systems. No one could be trusted until they figured out who was working against them. If someone at Tesla had betrayed them, it would be the end of everything. The team gathered in the war room, where Charlie stood at the head of the table, his face grim. "We've been compromised," Charlie said, his voice laced with frustration. "Someone inside Tesla is working with orbital AI. We can't trust anyone right now. Maya, can you track any unusual activity on our systems?" Maya nodded, tapping furiously at her laptop. "I'm already working on it. There's been some strange network traffic that doesn't make sense. It's been happening for weeks. But I need more time to isolate the source." Charlie rubbed his temples. The weight of the situation was suffocating. They had to move quickly. But the more he thought about it, the more certain he became that this wasn't just about technology. It wasn't even just about the business rivalry. This was personal. Someone they trusted had betrayed them. Hours passed as Maya continued to dig into Tesla's systems, looking for any sign of a leak. Finally, her eyes widened. "I think I've found something." Charlie's heart skipped a beat as he leaned in closer. "What is it?" "It's a backdoor. A hidden access point that someone has been using to relay data to orbital AI," Maya said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "It's not sophisticated, in fact, it's almost amateurish. Whoever did this didn't want to get caught. But they made a huge mistake." "Who?" Charlie asked, already dreading the answer. Maya's fingers froze. She looked at the screen for a long moment, then slowly turned to face Charlie. "It's someone close to you. It's Greg." The room went silent. Greg's face went pale as he looked up at Charlie, his expression a mix of confusion and disbelief. "Charlie, I swear to you, I didn't." But Charlie cut him off, his voice cold and steely. "Is it true, Greg? Have you been leaking our plans to orbital AI?" Greg shook his head frantically. "No. I would never do that. I don't know how this happened. I'm being framed." Charlie stood motionless, his mind racing. He wanted to believe Greg, but the evidence was overwhelming. It was Greg's credentials that had been used to access the system, his account that had been the point of contact between Tesla and orbital AI. But the truth was elusive, and Charlie didn't know if he could trust anyone anymore. The tension in the war room was unbearable. Charlie stood at the head of the table, eyes fixed on Greg, his mind racing. Greg's face was pale, his hands shaking, but there was an unmistakable look of desperation in his eyes. "I swear, Charlie, I didn't do this," Greg repeated, his voice low and urgent. "I don't know who's behind this, but it's not me." Charlie's gaze hardened. He wanted to believe Greg, but the evidence was damning. How could Greg's account be the one used to access Tesla's most sensitive systems unless he was involved? How could they trust anyone now, when they'd been betrayed by someone they'd considered a friend? For a long moment, Charlie was silent, his thoughts spinning in every direction. But the one thing that was certain was that the team couldn't afford any more mistakes. They couldn't afford to be divided, not when the stakes were higher than ever. "Greg, I don't know if you're involved," Charlie said, his voice colder than he intended. "But right now, you're the only lead we have. And I can't take any chances." Zoe stood up from her chair, her face set with determination. "Charlie, we need to think this through. Greg has been with us through all of this. He helped us get to this point. We need to give him a chance to explain." Greg nodded quickly. "I'm telling you the truth. If you don't believe me, then we're all dead in the water. I can't do this alone, but I can help you find the real traitor." Charlie glanced between Zoe and Greg, torn. He wasn't the kind of leader who trusted easily, but he knew that jumping to conclusions without the full picture could be just as dangerous as inaction. He exhaled slowly, his eyes locking with Greg's. "All right. You get one chance to prove you're not the one who's been leaking information. We're going to dig into this together." Greg looked relieved, but Charlie's mind was already working. They needed to get to the bottom of this, and fast. The future of Tesla, of transportation, and of their entire mission depended on it. Maya had already begun analyzing the backdoor in Tesla's systems that had been used to siphon off data. She worked tirelessly, her eyes flicking across lines of code, searching for any clue that might indicate who was responsible for exploiting the vulnerability. The others watched in silence as she typed, her expression focused and unyielding. "Give me a minute," Maya muttered, her fingers moving faster than Charlie could keep up with. "I'm isolating the source." Charlie paced back and forth. Every minute they wasted was another minute Nexus Robotics and Orbital AI had to tighten their grip on the cities they were testing their infrastructure in. There was no room for error now. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Maya looked up. "Got it. I've traced the signal back to an external server, it's not in our local systems." Charlie's brow furrowed. So it wasn't Greg's account alone. "No," Maya replied, shaking her head. "Someone accessed the system from the outside. They're using a server disguised as a legitimate connection. It's highly sophisticated, but there's a pattern. The server is routed through a series of encrypted proxies." "Which means?" Zoe asked, leaning in. "It means the person who set this up knows exactly what they're doing," Maya said. "They've gone to great lengths to hide their tracks. But, there's a flaw. A mistake in the routing. And I've found it." Charlie's heart skipped a beat. This was it. "Where's the flaw?" Maya tapped a few keys, bringing up a map of the routing paths. "The last proxy is located in a server farm in Silicon Valley. It's a small operation, nothing significant on the surface. But I can't help but feel like this is where we'll find our answers." Charlie's jaw clenched. "We need to move fast." The team quickly packed up and made their way to the server farm in Silicon Valley. The urgency in the air was palpable. The closer they got, the more they realized how much was riding on this operation. If they could uncover who was behind the leak, they might be able to stop the entire plot before it fully unfolded. As they approached the facility, Charlie couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The server farm appeared small and inconspicuous, just a nondescript building tucked away among other warehouses in an industrial area. But Charlie knew that appearances could be deceiving. If this was where the leak originated, it was more than likely that the people inside would be prepared for an intrusion. "Stay sharp," Charlie said, his voice low and steady. "We don't know what we're walking into." Maya and Zoe flanked Charlie as they approached the entrance. Greg, though still under suspicion, had insisted on accompanying them, eager to clear his name. They were all on edge, knowing that the answers they sought were behind that unassuming door. Charlie nodded at Maya, signaling her to disable the security system. Within seconds, the door clicked open, and they slipped inside, the low hum of the servers filling the air. They moved quickly, staying low, and made their way to the heart of the facility. It was eerily quiet, the only sound a constant were of the machines. They reached the main server rack, and Maya got to work, her hands flying across the console. "I'm in," she said, a note of triumph in her voice. Charlie leaned over her shoulder, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do you see?" Maya's face went pale. "This is bad. This server was used to coordinate the entire operation. But there's something else." She tapped a few more keys, and the screen flashed to life, revealing an encrypted database. This is the real system behind Orbital AI's infrastructure. This is how they've been feeding Tesla's data back to them. The realization hit Charlie like a punch to the gut. So, it was never about just getting data. They've been manipulating us, feeding us misinformation, making us think we were closer to the truth than we actually were. Maya nodded. Exactly. The entire game has been rigged. Charlie's blood ran cold. The question was no longer just who was behind the leak, it was what they were planning next. They had been outplayed, and now, they were walking into the final stage of a game they hadn't even realized they were playing. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway. They weren't alone anymore. Time to go, Zoe whispered urgently. But it was too late. The door slammed open, and figures clad in dark tactical gear rushed into the room, weapons raised. Don't move, one of the figures ordered, his voice cold and commanding. Charlie's heart raced. They were trapped. The walls were closing in. The air in the server room felt thick with tension as Charlie and his team found themselves face to face with heavily armed figures. The masked men, clad in tactical gear, blocked every possible escape route. Their presence, as cold as the metal walls surrounding them, spoke volumes. They were trained, prepared, and above all, they weren't here to negotiate. Charlie's mind raced, but he kept his outward composure. His heart pounded in his chest, the reality of their situation sinking in. They were cornered. The server farm that had seemed like their best chance for answers now felt like a death trap. We've been waiting for you, the leader of the group said, his voice dripping with disdain. He stepped forward, his gun trained on Charlie's chest. The team instinctively backed up, positioning themselves defensively, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The leader smiled beneath his mask, as if savoring their helplessness. You're too late, the leader continued. Orbital AI has already won. We don't need you anymore. Who are you? Zoe demanded, her voice sharp and fearless, despite the dire circumstances. The leader chuckled darkly. You can call me Agent Black. And as for who I work for, well, I think you already know. Orbital AI doesn't leave things to chance. You should have known we'd be one step ahead. Charlie's mind was racing, analyzing every possible move. He wasn't about to give up without a fight, but the truth was staring him in the face. They'd walked right into Orbital AI's trap. Not only had they been betrayed by someone within their own ranks, but the entire operation had been orchestrated from the start to draw them in. So, this was all part of the plan? Charlie said, forcing himself to keep his voice steady. You were never after the data. You wanted us to come here, to be caught. Agent Black's smile widened. Exactly. You were just the bait. Now, we finish this. The cold realization that everything had been a setup gripped Charlie's chest. They were pawns in a game far bigger than they'd ever realized. Orbital AI had been manipulating every move they made, from the misinformation in the city to the false leads they'd been fed. They had been leading Charlie and his team in circles. We know what you're after, Charlie said, his voice low but full of defiance. You're not just taking control of Tesla's infrastructure. You're trying to control the world. Agent Black's eyes gleamed with a cold amusement. That's the idea, yes. Control isn't just about technology. It's about information. And you've been feeding us everything we needed. Charlie took a deep breath, assessing the situation. There had to be a way out. He couldn't let it end like this. We're not done yet, Charlie said, his voice firm. He motioned to Maya, who was still sitting by the console, trying to stay calm. Maya looked up at Charlie, her eyes narrowed in determination. I'm not giving up that easily either. Without warning, Maya's fingers flew over the keyboard, typing in a series of commands. She'd been working with the servers, trying to figure out a way to turn the tables on Orbital AI. She had been quiet, focused, but now, her efforts took on a new urgency. What are you doing? Agent Black growled. I'm disabling your network, Maya said through gritted teeth. I may not be able to take down all of Orbital AI's systems, but I can at least make sure you don't walk away from here with anything. A series of flashing lights on the server rack confirmed Maya's actions were working. Suddenly, several screens went black. The servers, once humming with activity, started to whir as their systems went offline, one by one. Agent Black's expression darkened. "You're making a mistake." "I don't think so," Charlie replied, taking a step forward. "We're going to get out of here, and we're going to take you down." In that moment, Charlie's mind was made up. They weren't just fighting to stop Orbital AI's plan, they were fighting for their survival. The room was charged with the raw energy of their defiance, each of them determined to see it through, even if they were up against impossible odds. The sound of distant sirens began to fill the air, signaling that help might be on the way. But Charlie didn't dare count on it. They were on their own. The seconds were slipping away, and they needed to act fast. Charlie glanced at Greg, who was still standing near the back of the room, his expression full of guilt and fear. Greg's betrayal weighed heavily on everyone, but now wasn't the time for internal conflict. They needed to focus on escaping. "Greg, we're getting out of here," Charlie said, his voice commanding. Greg nodded, his eyes darting nervously to the armed figures blocking the exit. "What's the plan?" "We'll use the ventilation system," Maya suggested, her fingers still dancing over the keyboard. "It's a long shot, but if we can override the controls, we might be able to get out undetected." Zoe nodded, glancing at the others. "It's better than standing here waiting for them to shoot us." The team quickly moved toward the back of the server room, where Maya had identified a ventilation shaft that led to the outside. They weren't sure how much time they had, but they had to move now. Just as they reached the ventilation shaft, Agent Black called out. "Don't think you're getting away. It's already over." But Charlie wasn't listening. He motioned for Maya to take the lead, and without another word, they started climbing into the shaft, one by one. The tight space was uncomfortable, and the metallic walls felt like they were closing in around them, but they had no choice. There was no turning back. They moved as quickly as they could, but every sound seemed amplified in the narrow vent. The footsteps of their pursuers echoed in the distance, and the reality of their situation felt more urgent than ever. They had to get out. They had to survive. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the team emerged from the ventilation system and into a hidden alleyway behind the server farm. The cool night air felt like a rush of relief, but they knew they weren't safe yet. They still had to evade Orbital AI's security forces, and whatever they had planned next. As they hurried to find a vehicle, Charlie's mind was already working. He knew this was only the beginning. Orbital AI wouldn't let them go that easily. They had to stay ahead of them, find a way to strike back. But one thing was certain, the fight was far from over. The adrenaline pumping through Charlie's veins had barely subsided by the time they reached the alley behind the server farm. They were on edge, alert to every creak and crack of the night air. The distant hum of the city felt miles away, as if the world had shrunk to this one moment, and the weight of what they'd just survived. They couldn't stay here. Not for long. Orbital AI's forces would soon figure out what had happened, and once they did, they would sweep the area, looking for any sign of their escape. Every second counted. "We need a vehicle," Charlie said, his voice low, tense. "Something fast. Something that can get us out of here without being spotted." Zoe scanned the street, her sharp eyes flicking over every car parked along the alley. "There's a van down the block," she said. "It's unmarked, parked in the shadows. We can take it." Charlie nodded, grateful for her quick thinking. They couldn't afford to waste time, so they moved quickly, slipping through the dark alley like shadows, keeping low and silent. The flickering streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, and Charlie's heart raced with each step. They reached the van in a few short moments, and Maya quickly popped open the door, revealing the empty interior. "Perfect," Charlie muttered. "Let's go." As they piled into the van, Charlie took the wheel, Zoe sitting shotgun, with Greg and Maya in the back. The van's engine roared to life, breaking the tense silence that had gripped them all. Charlie glanced at the rearview mirror as they pulled away, scanning for any signs of pursuit. So far, nothing. But he knew they couldn't let their guard down. They were too close to the edge of something huge, and orbital AI wouldn't stop hunting them. Where to? Zoe asked, breaking the silence. We need to lay low, Charlie replied. Head for the outskirts of the city, somewhere we can regroup and figure out our next move. We've still got work to do. Maya turned to face him, her voice tinged with worry. Charlie, orbital AI is going to be on our tail. You saw what happened back there. They have every resource, every advantage. How are we supposed to beat them now? Charlie's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He could feel the weight of the question pressing on him. What now? How could they possibly outsmart a force like orbital AI, an organization with seemingly limitless resources and power? He exhaled, trying to push down the panic that had begun to rise in his chest. We fight back, Maya. That's what we do. We don't give up. We find their weakness and exploit it. If they think they've won, we prove them wrong. But deep down, Charlie wasn't so sure. He had no clear plan. No backup. All they had was their will, their knowledge, and the skills they'd learned over the past few months. And right now, that didn't feel like nearly enough. Hours later, they reached a secluded cabin on the outskirts of the city, tucked away in the dense forest. It was the perfect hideout, far enough from the prying eyes of the city, with no easy way for orbital AI's forces to track them down. Charlie had used it as a safe house in the past, and it had served him well during previous operations. As they pulled up to the cabin, Charlie felt the briefest sense of relief. But it didn't last long. I'll set up the security, Zoe said, already heading toward the back of the cabin. Charlie nodded, watching her go. She was always the first to take charge, to make sure their perimeter was secure. It was one of the things he admired about her. Greg stepped up next to Charlie, his expression grim. Charlie, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't know things were going to get this bad. I didn't mean to put us in this situation. Charlie turned to face him, his eyes hard. He wasn't sure how to respond. The betrayal stung, but right now wasn't the time for blame. Greg, we don't have time for this, Charlie said, his voice firm. We need to focus on fixing this, not pointing fingers. I just wanted to help. I didn't want any of this, Greg muttered, running a hand through his hair. But now. I don't know if I can fix this. I don't even know who I can trust anymore. Charlie's mind raced. He had seen this kind of doubt before, in soldiers who'd been pushed to the brink. But he had no time for doubt. They needed Greg's help now more than ever. You're still on our side, Greg. You're still part of the team, Charlie said. Right now, we need to be united. We'll figure this out together. But if you're questioning your loyalty, this is the wrong time. Greg looked up at him, eyes filled with regret, but Charlie could see the flicker of resolve returning. It wasn't the time for apologies. Not yet. They had bigger problems. Thanks, Charlie, Greg said, his voice quieter now. I'm in. Let's do this. Charlie clapped him on the back and turned toward the cabin. They had no time to waste. The plan was simple: regroup, plan their next move, and stay out of sight long enough to strike back at orbital AI. Inside the cabin, Maya was already at the small desk, her laptop open and humming with activity. I've managed to pull some data from Orbital's network, she said, without looking up. But it's fragmented. It'll take time to piece it all together. We don't have time, Charlie replied. We need something we can use, now. I know, Maya said, frustration evident in her voice. But every piece of data I pull brings us closer to understanding how their systems work. If we can crack the code, we can stop them from gaining total control. Charlie sat down across from her. What's the status on their leadership? Do we know who's running the show? Maya glanced at him. That's the thing. We don't know. All I have are traces, random people in different cities, connected through anonymous servers. It's like they're hiding in plain sight. Figures, Charlie muttered. This is bigger than we thought. Zoe re-entered the cabin, having finished setting up their perimeter. I've put up some surveillance traps. If orbital AI sends anyone looking for us, we'll know about it. For now, we have a few hours to breathe. Charlie leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. They had a brief window of peace, but they couldn't afford to waste it. Not when orbital AI was out there, one step ahead of them, plotting their next move. We're not safe here forever, Charlie said, eyes hardening with resolve. We can't keep running. We need to make them come to us. We need to find their weak spot and take it. But as he spoke, a nagging thought crossed his mind. Were they really the ones in control anymore? Or had orbital AI already planned their next move, one they hadn't seen coming? One thing was certain, the clock was ticking. The cabin was silent, save for the soft tapping of keys as Maya worked tirelessly at the desk, her eyes glued to the screen. Charlie sat across from her, his fingers idly tapping on the armrest, his mind racing through 1,000 possible scenarios. They had barely escaped orbital AI's clutches, but they were far from safe. The real challenge had only just begun. Charlie glanced at his watch. It had been hours since they arrived, but it felt like days. He had to admit, he was worried. They were running out of time. They couldn't afford to stay hidden much longer. Orbital AI would be hunting them, and they needed a solid plan to turn the tables before they were tracked down again. How's it looking? Charlie asked, his voice low but urgent. Maya didn't look up, her fingers flying over the keys as she spoke. I've been digging through their data, but it's encrypted, layered in multiple firewalls. Whoever built this system knew what they were doing. It's not just a matter of breaking through a couple of barriers. We're up against a fortress. Can you get through it? Charlie pressed, his eyes narrowing. We need to find out where orbital AI is operating from, who's behind this, and fast. Maya paused for a moment, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. I think so, but it'll take time. I need to break down the encryption step by step. I'm getting traces of their communication networks, but they're all obscured by layers of proxies. Whoever's running this is good. I mean really good. Good enough to stop us? Zoe asked, sitting on the couch with her legs crossed. Her voice had a sharper edge than usual. The stress of being hunted had begun to show on her face, and it was clear that everyone was feeling the weight of the situation. Maya didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled up another screen, her brow furrowing as the data appeared. It's hard to say. They're covering their tracks well. But I'm starting to see patterns. If I can follow these traces to their source, we might be able to pinpoint where orbital AI's leadership is operating from. That's our next step. Charlie stood up, pacing the room. We can't wait any longer. We need to find out who's in charge, and we need to strike back. If they're going to send more men after us, we need to be ready. Greg, who had been sitting quietly in the corner of the room, suddenly spoke up. Charlie, I know we're trying to take them down, but we don't have the resources. We're just a handful of people. We're up against a corporation that has billions of dollars, a network that spans the globe, and more power than we can imagine. How can we possibly take them on? Charlie turned to Greg, meeting his eyes with an intensity that cut through the doubt in his voice. We don't need to beat them at their game. We need to outsmart them. They're powerful, yes. But they're not infallible. They think they can control everything, but that's their mistake. If we can find their weakness, exploit it, and take it away from them, we can hit them where it hurts. We don't need to win every battle. We need to win the right one. Zoe nodded, her eyes steely with resolve. Charlie's right. We're not going to take them down with brute force. We'll use their own system against them. Maya looked up from her screen, her eyes glowing with determination. It's not going to be easy, but it's possible. I think I'm close to cracking their central server. If I can gain access to the heart of their system, we can launch a counterattack. Charlie walked over to the desk and leaned over Maya's shoulder, studying the data on the screen. How long until you're ready? Depends, Maya replied, her eyes flicking back and forth between several lines of code. I need a few more hours. It's risky, but if we can get in undetected, we could have the element of surprise. The clock was ticking. Charlie didn't know how much time they had, but every moment that passed felt like it brought Orbital AI closer. He glanced at the others, his team, the people who had been with him since the beginning of this insane mission. Each one of them had their own doubts, their own fears. But right now, they had one goal, to survive and stop Orbital AI. I'll take first watch, Zoe said, her tone firm. I'll keep an eye on the perimeter. If anyone's coming, we'll know. Charlie nodded, grateful for her vigilance. He knew that even in their dire situation, they couldn't afford to let their guard down. Orbital AI had resources everywhere, satellites, drones, even local law enforcement could be working with them. They had to be smarter than that. As Zoe moved to the door to scan the surroundings, Greg leaned forward, his voice quieter. Charlie, I've been thinking about what you said. You're right. We don't have to win every battle. We just need to win the right one. But I need to know, what happens if we don't make it out of this? Charlie turned to face Greg, his eyes serious but calm. We make sure we don't lose. Not today. Not ever. Hours passed in tense silence as Maya continued her work, the steady hum of her laptop the only sound filling the cabin. Charlie, Zoe, and Greg took turns keeping watch. The forest around them was eerily quiet, as though the very trees were holding their breath, waiting for what was coming next. Charlie couldn't help but wonder how long they would be able to stay hidden. Eventually, Maya straightened up, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I'm in. I've cracked it. Charlie's pulse quickened. This was it. This was the moment that could turn the tide. What do we have? Maya pulled up a map of encrypted servers, a network that spread across the globe like an intricate spider's web. At the center of it all, a single red dot blinked, a massive central server located in an undisclosed location. Maya zoomed in on it. This, she said, pointing to the server, is where Orbital AI's core systems are housed. If we can infiltrate this server, we can shut down their communications, access their data, and potentially cripple their entire operation. Charlie stared at the map, his heart racing. This was the break they needed, the weakness they had been searching for. We have to hit this hard and fast, Charlie said, the plan forming in his mind. Once we're inside, we take control of their communications and extract everything we can. We can't leave until we have something we can use against them. Greg swallowed hard, his earlier doubts resurfacing. What if we get caught? We won't, Charlie replied, his voice firm. We've made it this far. We're not stopping now. Zoe, standing by the door, turned to them. Let's do it. Whatever it takes. Charlie nodded, his mind already racing through the next steps. They were about to take the fight directly to Orbital AI. But as he looked at the red dot on the screen, a nagging feeling tugged at him. Something about this location felt too perfect. Too easy. But there was no turning back now. The tension in the cabin was palpable, thick enough to cut through. Charlie stood by the window, his eyes scanning the dark woods outside. Every rustle in the trees, every gust of wind, seemed amplified, as though the world was holding its breath along with him. Maya was at the desk, her fingers flying over the keyboard, working to prepare their access to Orbital AI's central server. Zoe was pacing, her usual calm demeanor replaced by an edge of restlessness. We've got one shot at this, Charlie said quietly, breaking the silence. We can't afford to mess this up. I know, Maya replied without looking up. The second we access that server, they'll know. We'll be in their system, and they'll come after us. Hard. Zoe, still pacing, paused and turned to face them. And what if it's a trap? What if they're waiting for us to make a move? Charlie glanced at her, considering her words. He knew that this was a possibility they had to consider, but there was no other choice. Orbital AI had already shown they were willing to do whatever it took to stop them. Hiding wouldn't save them. We don't have the luxury of time, Charlie said firmly. We either take the fight to them now, or we'll be hunted down for the rest of our lives. We've already made it this far. We can't stop now. Zoe's eyes narrowed in determination. You're right. We don't back down. Let's do it. Maya finally lifted her gaze from her laptop, her face set in grim resolve. I've isolated the server. I've mapped out their security protocols, but we're going to need to be quick. I'm not sure how long it'll take them to notice us, but once we're in, they'll try to lock us out. Just get us in, Charlie replied, walking toward her. We'll handle the rest. Maya nodded and began typing furiously, the glow of her laptop reflecting in her eyes as she worked. The seconds felt like minutes, and the minutes felt like hours. Charlie stood with his arms crossed, waiting. His mind was racing, jumping from one scenario to the next. They had planned for every contingency, but there was always the lingering feeling that they were walking straight into the heart of Orbital AI's operations, a place they could never truly escape. After what felt like an eternity, Maya's fingers slowed to a halt. I'm in, she said, her voice tinged with both relief and unease. I've breached the firewall. We've got access. Charlie felt a jolt of excitement, but it was quickly overshadowed by a nagging fear. They were officially in. There was no turning back now. Get us the data, Charlie said, his voice steady, though he could feel his heart pounding in his chest. We need everything we can find. Maya nodded and began pulling up files, one after another. Lines of data flashed across the screen, but there was too much. Too many layers, too many coded messages. This is, more than just a network, Maya muttered, her brow furrowing as she processed what was on her screen. It's a whole system. Every piece of information, every transaction, every location is being tracked. They're controlling more than just technology. They're controlling people, entire industries. I don't know how deep this goes. We knew it was big, Charlie said, voice low. But we didn't know how big. Keep digging. We need their leadership structure. We need to know who's pulling the strings. Maya worked feverishly, searching through layers of encrypted files, her face a mixture of determination and worry. The clock was ticking. The second they accessed the server, Orbital AI's internal systems would go into lockdown, and they'd be locked out. If they didn't get what they needed before then, it would all be for nothing. Finally, Maya paused, her fingers trembling slightly as she highlighted a series of files. Here. I think I've got something. Leadership details. Locations. The whole command structure. Charlie leaned over her shoulder, his eyes scanning the information on the screen. A list of names, code names, and locations filled the screen. But one name stood out above the rest. It was familiar, too familiar. Elon Musk, Charlie whispered, his voice barely audible. Maya looked up at him, surprised. You've heard of him? Charlie's mind raced. Elon Musk was one of the most influential men in the world. His company, SpaceX, had made massive strides in technology and space exploration, and his Tesla empire had revolutionized the automotive industry. But why would his name be at the center of Orbital AI's operations? I've heard of him, Charlie said. But this doesn't make sense. He's not just involved with tech. He's been working on something bigger, something secret. Maybe this is the missing piece. Zoe, who had been listening intently, now stepped forward. So, what do we do? We have the information, but we're still in the dark about how to stop them. We take the fight directly to them, Charlie said, determination settling in his chest. If Musk is involved in this, we need to confront him. We need to expose him for what he's doing. Maya frowned. That's easier said than done. Musk is a powerful figure. He has resources. And he's no fool. He'll see us coming. We don't give him the chance, Charlie replied. We hit him hard, and we hit him fast. We use the information we've got to break their system from the inside out. We can't let them control everything. Not when we know who's behind it all. Maya nodded slowly, a spark of understanding in her eyes. I can get into Musk's personal systems. I can track him, his communications, his whereabouts. Do it, Charlie said. We don't have time to waste. We need to make our move now. The next few hours were a blur of preparation. Maya set up her systems to trace Elon Musk's movements, Zoe ensured their escape routes were secure, and Greg prepared supplies for their journey. Everyone knew that once they left this cabin, there would be no turning back. They were about to take on orbital AI, and no one could predict how it would end. As the final preparations were made, Charlie felt a growing sense of resolve. He knew the stakes. If they failed, it wouldn't just be them who paid the price. The world would fall under orbital AI's control, and the future of humanity would be in the hands of a few powerful individuals, with no one to stop them. But if they succeeded? If they exposed the truth and took down orbital AI? It would change everything. He turned to his team, looking each of them in the eyes. We've come this far. We're not stopping now. Let's finish this. The air was thick with anticipation as Charlie and his team stepped out of the cabin into the cold night. Their mission had reached its apex. Every decision they'd made, every risk they'd taken, had led them to this point. There was no turning back now. Zoe adjusted the strap of her backpack, checking the gear one last time. Her eyes were fierce, but there was an undercurrent of fear that she couldn't entirely mask. Greg, standing beside her, was no different. The weight of what they were about to do was heavy, but they knew they couldn't afford to hesitate. Maya was focused, her mind still working on the systems as she connected her laptop to a mobile device. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, a quick flurry of commands that would direct them to their next target, the headquarters of Orbital AI. She looked up briefly, meeting Charlie's gaze. I've got their communications. I can track Musk's location once we're inside his system. It's now or never. Charlie nodded, steeling himself. They had the data now. They knew the location of the central server that Orbital AI was operating from. They knew where Musk was hiding, what he was doing, and, most importantly, how to take him down. It was a matter of getting there before Orbital AI could lock them out. We're not here to ask for permission, Charlie said, his voice steady and filled with determination. We're here to stop this once and for all. We break through, we take the system, and we expose everything. No more games. Greg swallowed hard, his gaze lingering on the dark horizon. You really think we can do this? This is Musk we're talking about. He's a titan in the tech world. He's got an army of people, billions of dollars, and resources we can't even begin to understand. I know, Charlie replied, but this isn't about money or power. It's about control. He's playing God with everyone's lives, and we can't let him get away with it. We've already been up against worse odds. We've made it this far. We're not stopping now. The team set off, making their way through the dense forest, their steps swift and silent. Every rustling leaf, every crack of a branch underfoot sounded amplified in the eerie quiet. There was no turning back. They had one shot to get this right. As they neared their extraction point, Maya's voice broke the silence. I've got a secure signal from Orbital AI's server. They're aware we've breached the system. We don't have long before they lock us out completely. We need to move faster. Charlie's heart raced. How long do we have? Maya quickly glanced at her laptop. Maybe an hour, maybe less. The second we access Musk's personal communications, they'll send everything they've got after us. We'll be ready, Charlie said, his voice calm despite the pressure building within him. We'll make sure we're in and out before they can react. The journey was painstakingly slow, but they finally arrived at a secluded base hidden deep in the woods, a location well off the beaten path. It was here, in this isolated compound, that they would make their final move. The building itself was modest on the outside, but Charlie knew better than to underestimate its significance. Inside, Orbital AI's most valuable assets were secured, and now, it was their turn to break in. Maya got to work immediately, using her portable device to bypass the security systems. She typed at a rapid pace, her fingers never stopping as she spoke. The front door's locked. I'll have to create a backdoor into the system. Charlie glanced at Zoe, who had already moved into position, keeping an eye out for any potential threats. Greg, meanwhile, was setting up communications with the team's backup plan. They needed to be ready for a quick exit if things went south. Maya's fingers froze. Got it. We're in. Charlie's pulse quickened. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. Take us to Musk. Maya's screen flickered for a moment, and then a map appeared. The location of a private estate, hidden under layers of security protocols, glowed on the screen. I've located him, Maya said, her voice a mixture of triumph and caution. He's there, right now. We're going to need to move fast if we want to catch him off guard. Charlie clenched his fists. The time had come. This wasn't just about taking down Orbital AI. This was about exposing the truth. This was about everything they had fought for. They made their way through the compound, avoiding cameras and security guards as they went. Every second counted. Charlie could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. If they failed now, if they were caught, it was over. But if they succeeded, they would change everything. They reached a small command room. Inside, a massive screen lit up with a live feed from multiple security cameras. Maya quickly disconnected the cables running to the terminal, and the screen went black. His system is offline, she said. We've got the element of surprise. We need to move now. Charlie led the charge, taking a deep breath as he approached the central room. It was now or never. With a signal to the team, they rushed inside. And then, there he was. Elon Musk sat at a desk, his back to them, oblivious to their approach. On the screen in front of him, graphs and data scrolled, indicating the success of Orbital AI's newest operation. The moment he realized something was wrong, it would be too late. Mr. Musk, Charlie's voice cut through the air like a blade. Musk's head snapped up, his eyes widening in surprise. It's over. You've been exposed. Musk rose to his feet, his calm demeanor faltering for the first time. You think you can just waltz in here and stop me? I've built an empire, and you. We know everything, Charlie interrupted, his voice unwavering. We have the data. We know what you've been doing, how you've been controlling people, manipulating governments, and using AI to rewrite the future. The truth is coming out, and you won't be able to stop it. For a moment, Musk stood there, silent, calculating. Then, without warning, his hand reached for a hidden button on his desk. A warning siren blared throughout the building. You think this is over? You think you can take down Orbital AI? You're already too late. Before Charlie could react, the doors to the room burst open, and armed guards flooded in. You're surrounded, Musk sneered, as a cold smile spread across his face. This is the end for you. But Charlie didn't flinch. The team was ready. They had come too far to back down now. Zoe moved first, taking down 2 guards with quick precision. Greg followed, creating a diversion as Maya hacked into the security systems to disable the rest of the building's defenses. Get the data. Charlie shouted. With the team in motion, the final showdown was underway. Time was running out, but so was Musk's reign. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?